will be bringing us in through the invocation, and Commissioner Randall will be leading the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Lord, we're meeting today to conduct matters of business. Please guide our hearts and minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Randall. Commissioner English, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Apicella?
Here.
Mr. McPherson?
Here.
Mr. Bain? Ms. Vanucci? Myself? Mr. Boswell? Mr. Randall?
Here.
Madam Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Any declarations of disqualification or disclosure that anyone would like to speak to on any item on the agenda this evening?
Madam Chairman, just a reminder that I've recused myself from item number 1.
Thank you, Commissioner Apicella. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, just a disclosure that I met with the applicant shortly after our last meeting to talk about the recreational amenities in the proposed development.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will now open it up to public presentations. This is the part of the meeting where you can come down to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to address the Planning Commission. When the green light comes on, please state your name, your address, and the district that you reside. You'll have 3 minutes, like I said. When the yellow light comes on, you'll have 1 minute left. When the red light comes on, please conclude your comments. If you're here tonight to speak about item number 1, which is the Willow Run rezoning, then you will speak when we open up that public hearing. This is not the time to talk about this. But if you want to talk about anything else, can be anything, you can come down to the podium and talk to us for 3 minutes. Would anyone like to come down? We do have the speaker cards, but these are for the public hearing. Do you want to come down, Ms. Brown? Come on down.
Sorry, I had put in a speaker card for
It's okay.
this. I'm Dana Brown. I live at 41 St. Williams Way in the Rock Hill District. I'm here to speak tonight about item number 7, A1 uses. Full disclosure, I also happen to sit on the Board of Zoning Appeals. I am here tonight just speaking for myself. The Board of Zoning Appeals had asked a while back for the A1 uses to be updated because it had been a long time, and there'd been a lot of changes in the lot sizes in the A1s. And we had a consultant come in and recommend that we do that. So we sent that request in, and I think it's been rolling around between the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors for about a year. And thank you for working on that. I know that is a huge, huge job. I'm coming to speak tonight about wedding and event venues. We are seeing a lot of these on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we are finding with the smaller lot sizes, some of these big, large event venues are not suited. And it's my opinion that usage should be based on lot size, and not all uses are suited for all lots. And I just wanted to encourage you to, I think it's in your packet, that the Community Economic Development Committee is requesting somewhere around 20-acre minimum. I would definitely agree with that. We're finding that in these smaller neighborhoods, when we have these big commercial venues with a lot of cars, a lot of guests, a lot of music, that we need bigger property to have some separation. On the BZA, we have to consider a couple of things when we grant a special exception for a wedding venue, and those are, among others, is the use shall not tend to change the character and established pattern of development for the proposed use. The use shall be in harmony with the uses permitted by right under a zoning permit in the zoning district and shall not adversely affect the use of the neighboring properties. And the use shall not affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood, and it shall not be detrimental to public welfare or properties of the neighborhood. So we have to take all these things into account, and when we have a lot that's 3 acres, or it could be even 1.5 acres, and we have these huge, huge event venues with, 100 or more cars, we have porta potties, we have music, we have caterers coming in, we really find that tends to hurt the character and change the character of the neighborhood, because these things are sometimes every weekend. And so we need to look at that. So again, just please keep in mind that I at least, very much support the 20-acre minimum on event venues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Would anyone else like to come down and address the commission on anything other than the rezoning? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to go ahead and close the public presentations portion of tonight's meeting, and we're going to move on to item number 1 on the agenda, which is the reclassification and proffer amendment for Willow Run. And for this presentation, we're going to recognize Mr. Mike Zaraf.
Okay, good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. Mike Zaraf of the Planning and Zoning Department. I'm going to go over staff review of this zoning reclassification for Willow Run. This public hearing was originally held on March 27th, and it was tabled to this date for the applicant to address concerns raised at the initial public hearing. I'm going to go through just to rehash some of the background for anybody who may be new to this case. So this is a rezoning proposal which would rezone property from the A1 agricultural and B2 urban commercial zoning districts to the R2 urban residential medium density zoning district. This action would cover 148 acres. The second part of the rezoning request would rezone A1 property to B2 urban commercial. The B2 land would cover 5.6 acres on that part. And then the last part of the overall request is a proffer amendment on land that's already zone B2. This area is 7.53 acres, and it's basically amending old proffers that no longer apply. The applicant is Ward Corporation, and the site's in the Heartwood Election District. The location of the site is highlighted on this map. And there are 5 subject parcels subject to the request in total. The site covers 161 acres. It's located on the north side of Warrenton Road, west of the intersection with Village Parkway, and south side of Truslow Road, across from the entrances to the Willow subdivision. This is a zoning map of the subject area and the surrounding land. The rezoning area shows the portion of the property to be rezoned. As I mentioned, the portions going to R2 residential and B2 urban commercial. So those are the red dashed areas. And then the proffer amendment area is the land remaining, that's zone B2, where proffers are being amended. The 2 B2 zone parcels were rezoned from A1 agricultural in 1990. In 2007, both zoning actions assumed development of commercial retail uses in this area. Looking at the aerial view of the site, the majority of the site is wooded and undeveloped. Falls Run bisects the property running from west to east with associated wetlands and 100-foot critical resource protection area buffers. Other stream channels feed into Falls Run. There's a single-story bungalow constructed approximately in 1940. It's located along Warrenton Road. And then there's an existing road into the site. It's called Stafford Plaza Drive. This is across from Village Parkway. It was constructed concurrently with the Royal Farms. This is a privately maintained street that would also provide access into the development. This is the original general development plan submitted by the applicant and reviewed back on March 27th. The commercial development's located on 13-acre portions of the site that are shaded in red at the bottom of the screen. The residential development in the R2 zoned areas are located to the north of the commercial areas. This includes townhomes that are within the orange shaded areas and single-family dwellings in the yellow shaded areas. Primary access to the development would be via Collector Road. This is through the extension of Stafford Plaza Drive in this location and running all the way through the site. That road would meet up with Truslow Road across from the intersection with Summer Breeze Lane. And then there'd be another access point on Truslow Road at the intersection with Cool Breeze Way. The 2 access points are proposed off of Warrenton Road that would access commercial and residential areas. And there are potential interparcel connections located to the west of the site. The residential area in this plan depicted 444 total dwelling units with a mix of single-family, village, and townhouse units. The townhouse units are generally centrally located within the development, and then there would be a 50-foot buffer along the eastern property line with cardinal forest that would be required to be maintained through the proffers. So the applicant has made several amendments to the proposal, which is reflected in a revised proffer statement. There's a revised general development plan and a new exhibit referred to as the Truslow Road Roadway Improvement Exhibit. And I'll go through those now. So the big change in this proposal is the project would include a dedication of 30 acres to the county, which may be used for potentially elementary school or public park. It's basically the way the proffers are written, it is left open for the county to decide how best to use it. The site's located on the east side of the proposed extension of Stafford Plaza Drive. It's the blue shaded area on the map. And also the dedication would occur upon request by the county no later than completion of Stafford Plaza Drive. This land dedication does reduce the total number of units from 444 down to 394 units, and also equally reduces the number of single-family village and townhouse units. There are also proffers that would include an HOA restriction that no more than 10% of the townhouse units be rentals. That would be something that would have to be enforced by the HOA, and because that would not be something that the county would be able to enforce easily. Also along Truslow Road, there would be they're modifying the proffer to provide a reservation of right-of-way as opposed to dedication of right-of-way.
Mike, one question.
Yeah.
Back up at the rentals for the townhouses, you said that would be in charge of the HOA would be responsible.
Yeah.
Can the HOA do that? I mean, I know they got a lot of pull. Huh?
Do we have any, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to speak too much on it because I don't represent the HOAs, but my
As a-
guess is that
as
it
a
would be
rule.
difficult to do it, even if you could, because how do you monitor that?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right,
Do
thanks.
you, and I just have one follow-up question. Are there any subdivisions in Stafford County that have that proffer where the HOA actually successfully regulates rental units for townhomes?
I'm not certain. I'd have to research that.
Okay.
Okay. Also, there's a requirement. They added a requirement to complete Stafford Plaza Drive completely through the site prior to the 150th occupancy permit. Previously, there was not any necessary timing written into the proffers. Also, they proffering to enter into agreement with the county to commit to maintaining full access and maintenance of the private portion of Stafford Plaza Drive. And then also, they're proffering to modify the existing median break at Peach Lawn Road to only allow left turns from Warrenton Road. That would be at one of the points where there could be access into the commercial portion of the development. So it basically would be what's known as a slotted left turn where people from Warrenton Road could turn left off of Warrenton Road in each direction, but people from these adjacent properties could not turn and cross that median. Oops. Also, the last point, they're also proffering to provide additional community amenities. That's reflected on the general development plan. They would include a community center with pool in this location. Also in this area, you have a multi-purpose court and another playground. The original playground that was originally proffered is in this location. And then there's a picnic area and then another playground. Also, a new addition, the proffers also require the applicant to complete several improvements along Truslow Road prior to completing the Stafford Plaza Drive connection. This is the image of the proffered Truslow Road roadway improvement exhibit. So for orientation, the site is generally in this area. And let me change the color here. So look, what they'll be proposing to do is shift Truslow Road at each of the entrances into the Willows. In these locations, there's poor visibility, and in the proffer statement, shifting the road in the direction of this site will straighten out the alignment and make visibility better.
Mr. Zaraf, in
Yes.
order to do that, will they have to obtain easements and right-of-way from current residents, or are they already there?
When Willows went in, they did, there was right-of-way dedication already provided as part of the subdivision there. Depending on the type of improvements, there may always be some need, but given the fact that they control the land to the south, they could shift in the road to get the improvements to fit. But right-of-way was dedicated originally with when the Willows was developed.
But that's just in that area of Willow,
Yes,
just
right
that,
where the Willows.
on Cool Breeze, that's just that area where he's talking about.
Right,
Yeah.
the frontage along where the Willows is located is
It's
where
not
the
going,
right-of-way is.
not going to help the rest of Truslow.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Also, between these two access entrance points, they would widen Truslow Road to include 10-foot wide lanes and 2-foot gravel shoulders. It's essentially what's been referred to as wedge widening, where you kind of come in and do some midterm kind of improvements, which is something the county is looking at doing in several.
And where are they doing this? Can you show us on the map?
Yes, sorry. So the portion of the wedge, or the lane widening would be from the upper corner down to this point. And then beyond each way, there's going to be some work that's needed to transition back to the current configuration of
So
Truslow.
only in front of the Willows subdivision? Is that
Correct,
correct? Or
correct.
Willows Run, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And then, if adequate right-of-way exists, install up to 300 feet of guardrail to the east of the site. That is in this location. And then you can see install or replace up to 16 traffic signs in various areas along, and those are depicted on the map.
And what's the point of the guardrail?
I think it's a spot where there's overcorrecting and there's a very low shoulder, and so I guess my understanding is there's incidents of cars basically running off the road, and even though that's the inside of the turn, it's that's my understanding, and the applicant may be able to expand on that as
And
well.
I'm going to not ask too many questions, but the road thing is a big deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd asked you to prepare where the Board of Supervisors just recently did a transportation analysis, and Truslow Road was on that analysis, and they had recommended some improvements to happen to Truslow Road.
Mm-hmm.
How do these compare to all of the improvements on that road study?
Yes, yeah, so.
If you have that later, you don't have to
No,
answer it
it's,
now. Okay.
I have it here to talk
Okay.
about it here, yes. So, yeah, the county did conduct a comprehensive road study to look at all the roads and just kind of do an evaluation of all the different factors that go into, safety, number of accidents, the traffic volume, the road configuration to identify what roads might need improvement the most. And they came up with a list of projects or roads to determine where full improvements would be needed, and then where the midterm kind of wedge widening improvements could occur. And on that plan and in the results, Truslow Road in this portion was evaluated, but this portion actually did not rank high enough to meet the requirements and was lower in the scoring and was not one of the recommended portions for any improvements.
Does that go for all of Truslow Road?
The
or just
portion of
this portion?
Truslow to the east is the portion that was recommended, essentially to the east of Enon Road.
Okay, so they're going to make improvements on the part of the road that technically isn't the problem, but the part of the road that is the problem on the east is where we have the issues with safety that ranked high enough that it needs action. So can you just high level go through what some of those things are, like straightening curves, wedge widening, what were on those
So there'd be a wedge widening, which basically would be, and it's not really going to get too much into even straightening curves. It's going to widen the lanes a little bit and improve the shoulders.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yes.
You said, you, back up on your reference, you said the signs, they're gonna replace the signs. Some of the signs, I see that, isn't that VDOT's responsibility? Why would he have to do that? Because I see the 30, I guess the yellow you said is 30 miles an hour. Is that the one he's replacing school bus stop ahead and stuff? Is that what they were planning on putting in? Or is that?
Let me defer to the applicant to
All right, I'll ask him that question.
whether these are full replacements or new.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, go ahead.
Everybody listens to the signs anyway, so.
And another issue that was requested was information about crash data along the segment of Truslow Road. VDOT did prepare a crash data report for all the kind of collector roads in the county over a 3-year period from years 2015 through 2017. And in this study, there were 30 reported crashes, and I emphasize they're reported crashes, so if there was a crash or incident that wasn't reported, then VDOT didn't necessarily report on those. Those are reflected by the blue dots on the map. Their study found 12 of the 30 crashes were included injuries, and there were zero fatalities. The study includes kind of an average score that provides some sort of ranking, and it has a crash rate on this portion of Truslow of 347. The state average for this type of road is 126. And then the injury rate is 139 with a state average of 67.
So you just said 127 injuries on that road?
No,
What?
sorry, the injury rate. So
injury rate.
the number of injuries were 12.
Okay,
There's 30 crashes, 12 of the 30 crashes had injuries.
Okay.
And there's just an average rate, that's what I mentioned at
okay.
the end.
127 for that one, and then the average is 67?
139 is the rate, injury rate, 67 is the state average.
Okay, so 139 is worse than 67, right?
Yes. In this case, yes. Okay, also, you should have also received tonight some new information. The applicant provided a proffer kind of valuation report summary that provides a value and quantifies the value of the additional improvements and land dedication that are being proffered. So for some of the extra improvements of the full extension of Stafford Plaza Drive through the entire site, which isn't necessarily a requirement, the extra Truslow Road improvements and some of the extra access improvements along Warrenton Road, they've estimated a value of $4.2 million for those improvements, and estimated land dedication value of $3.26 million for the 34-acre portion of the project. This would provide a per dwelling unit kind of a land and improvement contribution amount of $19,000 per unit. This is basically the $7.5 million divided by the 394 total units.
And how does that stack up to the proffer guidelines?
The proffer guidelines are for single-family homes are over $47,000 per unit.
And townhomes?
Townhomes are,
41,557.
yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, so half is what they're giving, half.
Yes.
And that's with the land dedication for the public park/school site?
The land dedication and the extra transportation improvements, and this does not include they still have the cash contributions on top of this, which is $7,000 for a single-family unit, per single-family unit, and $5,000 per townhouse unit.
Okay.
So looking at we had this overall evaluation of positives and negatives, and kind of focusing on the highlighted items at the bottom. You know, they did increase the number of positive aspects with the changes to the project. The dedication of 30 acres, staff points out, should help to mitigate some of the public facility impacts. The timing of the proffered road improvements are now addressed in the revised application material to ensure the road connection all the way through the site in a timely manner. And then also the proposal does provide a plan to address some of the documented safety issues on Truslow Road as additional positives. Some of those points were previously negatives here, so these other negatives still remain, and I reviewed this last time, I won't go through it again. At this point, the staff does still not recommend approval of the application. Although there are several positive aspects, staff does not believe the proposal adequately mitigates all the impacts, and should the Planning Commission be inclined to recommend approval, the issues raised in the staff report should be incorporated into the proposal, and I'll take any questions at this time.
Mr. English?
Yeah, Mike, by right, how many could they put in there? I think it's 73 homes by right, if this wasn't approved. I think it was,
I think it was no more than 50, maybe
50
even
for by
less.
right?
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
roughly.
Is that with or without the 30 acres being taken away?
That's including the 30.
Oh, that's
That's including the entire site.
The entire site's 50 sites by right.
50.
50 housing units.
At the most, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Likely a little less.
50, okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Not right now, no.
I have one last question before you get down. So this project, very similar, I wasn't on the Planning Commission at the time, came before us several years ago. I think it was denied by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. I think when I was looking at the minutes, one of the biggest issues was road safety in Truslow Road. What improvements have been made to Truslow Road since that denial last time?
I'm not aware of any improvements other than maybe repaving. Yeah.
More potholes probably.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I
You have it.
was late to the party, sorry. So, I'm not overly familiar with all of Truslow Road. Could you show me on a map, or if you have a map, where Truslow Road is from Cambridge to Berea Church Road? Because that part of Truslow Road is identified by the county as being available for a wedge widening improvement. And so I don't know, I'm not sure, because I'm not familiar with it, where the Willow Run area of Truslow Road is compared to the Cambridge to Berea Church part of Truslow Road. Do you have something that can show me that?
This map does not go out far enough. So the portion where the wedge widening is recommended is essentially.
I see Berea Church right here, so
Yeah,
it
and-
connects to Berea Church all the way to
And-
my right.
And even immediately to the east of Berea Church is already the improved section where it was improved between Berea Church and Enon Road.
So it's none of Truslow Road that we see right here. It's Berea Church going east.
To the east, yes.
To the east.
Yes.
Okay. So this whole section then would still be in the condition that it's in, because the county's not identified that as being available for the wedge widening improvement. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
And traveling east is where you would go to downtown Fredericksburg and to bypass Route 17 to get to the interstates and to get to Route 1, right? So
Yes.
that's the most traveled aspect of the road versus the other
This
way.
portion out here, yeah, correct.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Not right now.
Would you like to come up, Mr. Ward?
Just for a second, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Richard Ward. I represent a small family business. I'm joined by Blake Smith, he's the civil engineer of record, and Kevin Seitzman, he's the transportation engineer. They're much more qualified to answer, I think, some of your technical questions than I am. Tonight, we're here just to show you the changes to the proposed community and the improvements surrounding them. We listened, we scribbled, we took a lot of notes at the last planning commission. We heard the citizens' concerns, and we hope you like some of the changes that we've made. I'd like to thank Mike. He always does a fantastic job, and he makes my speaking portion up here a lot shorter and less need be. I do have a couple of corrections. For Lauren, Heather Steele says hello up at Compton and Dueling, and she says check 55-509-3-1. It's rental of lots. What it does, it allows the master declarant to put the covenants on the land, and it becomes deed restricted. So the HOA is bound by law to handle
that and to manage that in that fashion with the rentals of the townhouses. And she said you could call her if you had any questions. We did have a comment and concern from our community meeting this week to talk about veterans that may be immediately deported or deployed or change from Quantico to Lejeune to wherever they may go. And we talked about putting in a hardship provision where they wouldn't have to wait for the 10%, but that lot would come, when it came up, it would fall into the 10%, so that they weren't burdened by that. Even though they did know of this provision prior to purchasing the house, all purchasers will sign something knowing that they know this provision.
And this is just because of the townhomes, right? This provision?
So
I
we
think the
believe that
residents are
home ownership,
concerned.
yes, for the townhouses. We believe that home ownership protects the fabric of a community, and so that the townhouses are actually strategically placed around the playgrounds so that there's actually more eyes watching the playgrounds in the community center, and they're also on the south side that back up to the commercial. So we believe that home ownership, when somebody buys a house, they come in and they go, I want new kitchen cabinets, I want this, I want that, and they're investing in their home, where we see a lot of the problems come from communities where it's not the first-time home buyer, it's the second and the third when they leave and they turn it into a rental.
So why not just take out the townhomes and do single family only? Because I got to tell you, I've gotten more emails on this project than I have my entire 4-year term on the Planning Commission with all projects combined. So, and that was a big concern for people, the amount of townhomes.
So I'm in a little bit of a box with that. We've proffered a lot of conditions. So
You have proffered a lot.
So one of the things is that, like, of all the things we heard, it was the safety on Truslow Road. And I understand that it's not part of the comprehensive road plan that was submitted to you guys in front of this commission on February 13th. But it's still a problem, and it still needs straightening out, and it's still something that every one of the people that at the community said, I'm worried about the safety on Truslow Road. So this is a fix, and it's a now fix for Truslow Road, and not something that's even on Stafford's plan to fix it.
Well, on the west side, not the east side.
Yes, and so in this area where we find, and I'll let Kevin speak to that, about crash data, about speeds, about traffic calming, about potential rumble strip, like why guardrails, why not guardrails. He's probably a little bit more qualified to answer those questions for you.
So one of the things, and I'm not going to give you the 5th degree here, but I think it, just before you move on,
Yeah.
I think that you should maybe look at a plan that doesn't have townhomes and just see what you can do there and what realistic proffers would be, just as an option, to see if the community was any more palatable.
So we reduced the townhouses on the north side based upon the concerns from the Willows. We put them just around the community center, basketball court, and tot lot. And through the amenity plan, which we met with Parks and Recreation, we understand that kids play in these 3 different sets. They're like the 2 to 5-year-olds, the 5 to 9, and like 10 to 14. And they all have different outdoor activities that they like to do. The community center has all 3. And so we put a few townhouses around there because we'd like to have a lot of eyes on that problems. We hear Cardinal Forest has some vandalism at some of their tot lots and stuff like that. And we think that there's a little bit there.
It's probably the kids.
As far as from a marketing, I'm not sure what I would put behind the commercial here's the thing, 3-acre lots are not gonna work behind a commercial. They're not going to work behind a Chick-fil-A or a car wash or an Outback Steakhouse or any of the potential people that we're talking to for the commercial out on the 17. So there's a potential with Stafford, we fall into a certain bunch of different categories where we're limited by the size of the lots. So, we can look at it, but it's from typical, and Mike can probably speak to this, typical zoning, it's like commercial. More dense, less dense, less dense. And 17 is a perfect example of that, how it sort of fans out into the agricultural area.
Okay.
I hear you, though.
I got a question. Royal Farms and the entrance right there by Royal
Yeah.
Farms, was that worked out?
We have proffered that we will set up a maintenance program and guarantee access through that.
But what was Royal Farms' response to that? Do they?
Steve Klebanow, the owner of the land lease at Royal Farms, we have an agreement with him. What they've done on the traffic light is they've created an easement that VDOT has the right to get in there, and if they want to put in the weights or any of the changes to the traffic light, we would just extend something very similar to that over the top of the road.
The traffic light's fine, but I'm saying, I thought you were going to use a cut-through right there to go to your,
Yeah, that road will continue all the way through.
But the Royal Farms was okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
They were?
Yep.
And then the other question I had about the signs, what's the things about the signs on Truslow Road?
Sure.
Isn't that VDOT's problem? Not you. Why would you be replacing the signs that are already
So
existing?
like I said, I think it's a now problem, and there's old signs that don't meet the current standards of like reflectability and so forth. And like I said, we did a traffic safety audit study. We
Right.
looked at this road very specifically to what will make it safe. Like, we heard those concerns, like make Trustlow safe. If you're gonna do this, make it safe. And so this report suggested replacing all those signs.
Okay, and
Like now,
back to
yeah.
Ms. Vanucci's question about the townhomes. Do you know of any place that the HOA is controlled as far as the,
In Stafford, because
In
we have a
Stafford,
really hard time with
right.
our HOAs.
in Stafford that allows that no rentals? I'm not,
So it's a state law, and
it may be a state law, but like her and I asked, what about Stafford? Do you know
so
anybody?
I don't know anywhere in Stafford that runs their HOA like that.
Right.
I don't think, so it's only given the ability to the declarant and the master developer to put this covenant in. And then once it's in, it runs with the land. So the HOA, so you can't come back and add this provision after communities exist.
But could they
without the
go-
vote of all of those people in the community.
But a
But the-
community can disband their HOA by
Yes.
by a
But it's-
majority vote.
But it runs, whoever manages it, whoever runs that still has to come in and follow the deed. And the deed says this runs with it.
But I don't think that that's true. Maybe we'll get some clarification
Sure, it
from
happens in
legal on
northern,
that,
it
but
happens in Northern Virginia a lot.
I
and the
sure
H-
would like to know that question.
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure that a
Answer.
resident can disband an HOA. I live near a subdivision where they disbanded their HOA. And then it's also only as good as the president sitting there, too. Mr. Stewart?
May I
Yeah.
help him, Madam Chair?
He's sweating through his suit now.
Anytime you
Said you
have,
weren't gonna put me in the hot
anytime
seat.
you have a restrictive covenant on a deed, not only could the HOA enforce it, but also any resident in the community could enforce it because it would be a violation of the restrictive covenant that everybody's bound by. So in your analysis, if they disbanded the HOA and a neighbor said, wait a minute, you can't rent that because it's more than 10%, they could enforce that covenant. The county could also cause it to be enforced if they so chose to do it, but I don't think the county wants to be
Yeah,
involved in
we
it.
don't have time to cut our trees, so we don't. Okay, so how many townhomes?
The exact number,
Yeah.
I know that there's 140 on the south side. Below, between the commercial property and Falls Run.
I have it in here, but I don't want to disorganize my
is-
papers. How many?
223.
123, so that's up to
223.
223, so you can have 22 rentals.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. English, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject. Do you have more questions?
But I've
Mr.
been-
Randall,
open to
you're reading a book over there?
Not
What's
at
going-
this time. I'm good.
Mr. McPherson, okay, so we'll pause, we're going to open
Sure.
up the public hearing.
Great.
And then we'll bring you back up to address some of the concerns from the public.
Okay, thank
Yeah?
you.
Okay. Okay, so at this time, we're going to open up the public hearing. I do have some speaker cards, so I'll read them in order, but I'll give you guys the rundown first. So you'll come up to the podium just as before. You'll state your name, your address, and the district that you reside. I'm assuming most of you live in the Heartwood district. When the green light comes on, that's when you'll state your name. When the yellow light comes on, you'll have a minute left to speak. When the red light comes on, please conclude your comments. If you lose track of the light, I will gently remind you that your time has run up. I realize there's a lot of people here tonight, and I know a lot of you guys have young children in school, and it's the end of the year. So if you just want to use your full 3 minutes, you're more than welcome to. We'd love to hear from you. If you just want to highlight some areas that maybe the person in front of you didn't speak to, you're more than welcome to not have to use your full 3 minutes as well. So the first person on the speaker list, and I believe he has a presentation, Mr. Sean Crady, and I apologize if I butcher these names. Can we have the computer for Mr. Crady, please?
Thank you. So Sean Crady, 1393 Trussell Road, Heartwood District. Have some images. Thank you. So good evening, Madam Chairman, Zoning Commission. I want to bring to highlight the safety issue. Mr. Ward's kind of talked about that. I live in between Willow Run Project, and we'll get to that in the other one. So there's been 12 vehicle accidents at my property since moving in October of 2018. 5 were reported. I think this falls into the data study that you're seeing. 5 reported, some driveways, other residents reported, but maybe they're not aggregated, so that's something to take into consideration. Let's see here. Okay, so my residence, you can see here on the left, that's the Willow Run Project. The highlighted orange arrow is the entry into a dangerous curve. This is one of many on Truslow Road. And then to the right, Norfolk Street is Cardinal Forest. Okay, slide. This is the curve. This is the curve where we have multiple accidents. It's just not myself. It's multiple neighbors. Issues are going on. And ultimately, I got in contact with VDOT, with Kyle Bates from Safety. He's since taken another position, but we were able to work out some stuff. And he has fully and freely stated it's a design flaw. There's a dip, and it's dragging individuals off the curve and dropping their tires off of where there are no shoulders. And then they're traveling through my property, other folks' properties, and wrecking. And yeah, so we're going to get to that. Next slide, please. The red arrows indicate the path of travel. So my property is right in front of you where the driveway is. Either they're going through and hitting my mailboxes, or they're cutting through and going right through my yard.
Where's your mailbox?
Well, it's probably not there, but it would be where that dark shadow area is, but you'll see in a minute.
Up in the tree?
Yeah, up in the tree. We've gone through 6 as of right now.
I live on Garrisonville Road. I gave up.
Yeah, I'm about to get a P.O. box probably. So you can see the shoulder here. When we moved into that property, it was not that bad. There has been so many vehicle accidents, it's just tearing it away, chunk by chunk. Next slide. I'm going to show just a few of the issues we deal with on a monthly basis. So just something, I appreciate the attempt for improvements, but the bus being hauled away, that was a wreck in the curve. And that's a tow truck, and that's just a little bit down from where they're pulling away from the curve, where they picked it up. Next slide, please. That vehicle is going through my front yard. That's happened about 3 times. I just got done cutting the grass right before that happened. So this is a significant issue, hence VDOT was involved, and we've gotten some chevrons put in, but we'll show you that in a second. Next slide. Vehicle rollover, first responders. You can see another vehicle crash, so multiple crashes right there. And I'll talk about the first responder resources in a minute. Next slide, please. And then this is where the overcorrection comes in. This is my neighboring. This is where they're coming out of the curve, they're wrecking, they're overcorrecting and hitting the neighbor's tree. Next slide, please. This is where my mailbox is. This is where it resides.
There it is. I see it now.
Yeah, there you see it. So yeah, that's just my front yard mailbox. I got about 14 seconds. Slide. So chevrons are in place. I contacted VDOT, worked with Kyle Bates. We got chevrons put up. That is a Band-Aid. That is not the fix to this issue. He has clearly stated the road needs to be straightened, and it was not straightened when they widened it. VDOT conducted a guardrail study October of last year. It did not meet criteria. I know my time's up. I apologize. Resources, first responders.
You can have about 30 more seconds because
Okay,
I interrupted you a few times.
So VDOT conducted the guardrail study. It's not the issue. It's not going to fix the issue. The overcorrection, they're going to come right across, and the guardrail is going to stop them in the head-on traffic. Resources, first responders will not be adequate. Traffic increase, planned project. You want to put a school in there, fine, but it's only going to amplify the excessive risk you're already incurring. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Ward, in his account, did meet with us at the HOA meeting. He did say he would talk to me, but you need to talk to the neighbors also. It's just not me. So
Thank
might
you.
want to get with them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have, and I'm going to name off 3 names now that the presentation is over, and you guys can just stand in a line and then come up when the person in front of you is finished. Miss Kelly Carter, Miss Lisa Ferentz, and Donald McDonald.
I don't want to be first.
You're second, you're not.
Oh, that's true. Thank you very much. I'm Kelly Carter. I live at 4 Bellamy Lane. I am in the Heartwood District. I am the HOA president in Cardinal Forest, so I'm not only here on my behalf, but also our neighbors. We have 253 homes in Cardinal Forest. Mr. Ward has been speaking with our HOA and our residents for the past 4 years, trying to make his plans work. My opposition is to this development, no personal bearing on Mr. Ward, but I beg of you not to allow this development to happen. Over the past 4 years, I've listened to Mr. Ward talk about what he wanted to do with this land. It first started out that he wanted to offer special low prices for those who served, firefighters, teachers, police officers. Then he said he couldn't do that. Then he came up with another plan, and another, and another. Now he's trying to sugarcoat it with the offer of land for a school, reducing a few single-family homes, and adding a clubhouse. This will change nothing about the problems that will come from additional people, cars in the area. Water erosion is still an issue. We have a big concern about water, but we have a huge concern about this traffic on Truslow and the sad shape that Truslow is in. I'm sorry. He's offered solutions to each of us that have talked to him, but I feel like every time we present a question to him, he has an answer. But let's be honest, can he really achieve everything that he's promising? He'll promise us a lot, but we won't realize that we're not getting it until it's too late. None of the plans that he continues to revise still solve the issue of traffic and overcrowding. I'm speaking mostly, of course, about 17 Truslow Road, Cardinal Forest, the Willows. Now he wants to fix Truslow Road. Clearly, we've just seen that's not the area that's an issue that he's proposing to change. There's areas of hazards, curving, winding country roads, 3-foot drop-offs on the edge of the roads. I've seen cars flip over there. I came upon an accident last year. A kid went back end overhead into the ditch. The only thing that's going to change with the plans that he is giving us is nothing. Traffic increase, people increase, it's only going to get worse. He said last time there was an average coming of over 6,000 cars per day. It's very difficult for us in Cardinal Forest already to get out of our own development. The light on 17, people run it on 17 all the time. So when we get the green light to leave our development, we're waiting. So then we decide to go out the backside because 17 and 95 is crowded, people are on Truslow Road. We're waiting again. It piles up all the way down to Enon to get out. We're stuck already in Cardinal Forest. I believe that he has plenty of commercial land. I don't understand why the commercial land and the housing development go together, but I don't see why he can't build his commercial and leave this land that's set up for the houses alone and not build at all. We would prefer that you all vote this down and not allow this development to be built. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ferentz. I'm at 15 Summer Breeze Lane at the corner of Summer Breeze and Truslow. I'm in the Heartwood District. In previous hearings, you've heard many of the reasons that the residents are requesting denial for the rezoning of the application for Willow Run. I understand that you have to balance residential growth and infrastructure with the fiscal health of the county. Stafford County's comprehensive plan provides you with the guidelines. So Chapter 3 in the comp plan states that this area is not a targeted growth area, but it's listed as suburban. Under special considerations for townhomes, the comp plan states that if land has not been previously rezoned or developed, townhouses could be considered if 60% or more linear footage that abuts the same type of dwelling, and this plan does not. It states that the density and the design should be compatible with adjacent parcels, and this does not because the adjacent parcels are A1 and R1. It states that developers are encouraged to preserve 25 to 50% of natural and usable open space, and if that space is used for a school, this barely qualifies for that. It also states that innovative development techniques are encouraged, and I'm not a civil engineer, but I can look at that plan and determine that there's not very much innovative development techniques used for that. So in the last 60 days, the changes that were made to this plan are not enough to mitigate our concerns. It's still unclear the style of homes and whether they match the existing homes in the area. The R2 density will destroy the open space and the rural character of our neighborhood. It's apparently unclear that the 10% rental criteria is enforceable. It doesn't adequately address the overcrowding of the middle schools, the high school, the library, and county services. It also doesn't adequately address crime and the increase of emergency services response time, both for crime and for traffic. Improvements to that small section of Truslow do not benefit the residents that live up and down that road that are not here being represented by an HOA. The road needs a comprehensive improvement plan and not just something that mitigates 1 or 2 of the curves out of 8 or 9 of the blind curves that are on that 2.5-mile stretch of road. The additional 6,000 or 7,000 trips per day, plus potential school buses, construction vehicles, and commercial traffic that are coming through from 17 will turn Truslow Road from a dangerous road into a deadly road. And I think that's all very apparent, recently with the issues with some of the roads being deadly. And of course, once this happens, it's too late, and we're stuck with that. So I urge you to please hear what we're saying and recommend denial of the rezoning of Willow Run. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, members of the commission, my name is Donald McDonald. I reside at 384 Gentle Breeze Circle. I'm in the Heartwood District. I think a lot of the things I was going to say have been said, but I do want to reiterate or reinforce a couple of things. One, my own concern principally is the traffic one. While Mr. Ward proposes to develop or to widen a small section of Truslow Road, I believe all that's going to do is provide for acceleration for people to come through that 300 to 500 feet of roadway and pick up speed and then hit the curves and start taking out more mailboxes and things. It still confuses me why there would be any access from the development onto Truslow Road at all. When you've got 17 on the other side, you've got the access point now at the Royal Farms. And if the development was extended slightly further to the west, then you'd have a logical intersection at Holly Corner. And then therefore block off any access to Truslow. I think that the traffic will, in all likelihood, all drop off onto Truslow, and again, just increase that significantly. I think there is this concern in my mind too about the way the development is currently structured, and it doesn't provide for any of that sort of transition from what in the Willows or even in Cardinal Forest or up Truslow further towards Poplar is basically low-density residential R1 zoning. We're now going to pile this development in there, and it doesn't provide any real transitions in accordance with the comp plan, as Lisa was pointing out, in terms of how you'd like to see development phased in and not destroy character of developments that's already there. While Mr. Ward has been, I think, has been listening to people, I still don't think we're at any point where there's any agreement that this development is going to mitigate any of the concerns that the residents that I've talked to have. So with that, with all due respect, I would ask the commission to deny this development at this point. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Charles McCullum, Denise McCullum, possibly, and Roger Altman.
Good evening. My name is Charles McCollum. I live at 77 Cardinal Forest Drive in the Heartwood District. I'm very interested in this development and its impact on the traffic at Truslow. What hasn't been mentioned is the Drees development that's off of Truslow that will increase the traffic also. And I think there's 100 units going in there. With this, an extra 6,000 or 7,000 trips per day it's not going to, the road network is not going to support it. The Falls Run, I realize waste management, water waste management is pretty good. However, we still have flooding in Cardinal Forest with Falls Run at its current flow rates. I just would recommend that we not approve the project. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Denise McCollum. I live at 77 Cardinal Forest Drive, Heartwood District. Proposed Truslow adjustments, widening guardrails and signs are less than a Band-Aid in making the traffic safe. Additionally, there are no improvements proposed for the Enon-Truslow intersection, which would have to accommodate these 394 new residences as well as the 100 that my husband mentioned, and we anticipate that there could be additional development in that section of Truslow between Brea Church and Enon. I just had an observation that with the 34 acres for public use, it looks like 8.75 acres are an existing drainage area. So I don't know how useful those would be in terms of building parks or schools. And my primary concern is that the area, the 148 acres to be rezoned from agricultural to urban residential, are completely forested. And with conversion to medium-density housing, there's substantial risk to the neighborhoods in terms of being in the middle of Falls Run and the surrounding wetlands. I think it's an environmental threat. And that worries me even more than the traffic. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Roger Oldman. I live at 418 Gentle Breeze Circle in the Willows. And I have nothing new or different from what any of the presenters have provided. I did want to thank them, our neighbor outside of the Willows, for his presentation. I thought that was very illuminating for me. And Lisa, I appreciate all of your research for this. I just don't see how putting approximately 400 units in front of the Willows is responsible. When we know we have all these road network issues, and I just don't agree with you, Mr. Ward, when you say that you have a fix it now. You have a mitigation plan for Truslow right in front of the neighborhood, but that's not the problem. The problems were pointed out in the presentation. And the rest of the roads, rest of Truslow, that becomes, as people have already said, an incredible feeder or workaround in the summertime, especially. So I just don't see how rezoning this makes any sense at all. So that's all I have to say, but I do want to thank you all for your time. I learned last time that this is you're doing on your time, your volunteering. Thank you so very much. And again, I appreciate all the help from the neighborhood making what I think is a pretty clear case for not approving this rezoning initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next three speakers, we have Ms. Ruth Carloni, Thomas Mata, and Glenda Kepczynski. And then after that, we have about 4 speakers. So I'll list those 4 names, and then we'll open it up to anybody who maybe didn't fill out a speaker card. But if you've changed your mind and you're going to speak now, you can fill one out, and we'll get you on the list.
Ruth Carloni, 300 Mount Olive Road. I use Truslow as a parallel road to avoid 17 whenever possible. So anyway, to me, there's no valid reason to approve the Willow Run. On the contrary, there's many reasons to vote for denial. Among other things, the schools, the traffic, as we all have been discussing, and the environment. Someone fortunately did bring up about the trees, one of the prior speakers. Right now, there are several units that are going to be built or in the process of being built. And we've got Liberty Hall that has 98 units, 980 trips for single family, 10 trips per house. That's in the process of being built. Then there's Truslow Ridge at 25 units. Then we have, and I'd be interested to hear what Mr. Ward has to say, there's 336 units about at Staffordshire. I'd like to know what the status is. That's also on Truslow Road. Oops, excuse me. We're all familiar with that. But anyway, the whole Truslow Road should be redesigned, not redesigned, but upgraded. It's unbelievable. At the corner of Truslow and Poplar Road on 17, the property is now up for sale on that corner, so no telling what's coming up there. We need to get VDOT in here and show a plan from Poplar Road all the way to Enon. We desperately need that. I talked with the gal over in Sheriff's Office, and this may conflict with other people's reports, but she gave me a figure of 55 accidents in 2018 on Truslow Road. Anyway, everybody has covered some of the issues, but this should not happen. Recommend denial to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Carlone.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Gregory Mata. I live at One Gable Court in Cardinal Forest. My property abuts Falls Run Stream. I had a couple of thoughts to mention before I kind of get into some of the substance. First, I guess I was thinking to thank Mr. Ward for his efforts in communicating with us, but also because he's managed to bring together Cardinal Forest as a community in a way that normally wouldn't happen. So there is a silver lining to this process. He said at one point in his presentation that he believed that housing ownership, affects the fabric of community, and I think you can't kind of disagree with that. But I think the corollary to that proposition is that the density of housing ownership can negatively affect a community. The presentation of these townhomes in an area that actually was recently, replanned for commercial development, actually in those strips. Is going to have an adverse impact on the people living there and living around it. Previously, when he came, he did not include a community center and a pool, and there were issues. My concern, not just for me, but the neighbors who live along Falls Run Stream, and Falls Run winds around to Linchester, the back of Cardinal Forest, before it heads off behind England Run and works its way all the way down to Falmouth. So we're building really a lot of roads and a lot of density at the top of the Falls Run Stream so that the runoff, and if you don't already know, Falls Run Stream is a 100-year floodplain. His storm ponds are only 10-year storm ponds, even under the revised plan. Is that correct? Yeah, because that's the minimum that's required by statute. So we're going to put all these roads in high density at the top of a stream that is notoriously known for flooding all the way down the length of the stream in a 100-year floodplain. Not only does that have significant environmental impacts, particularly for those of us who live north of Cardinal Forest Drive, the developer, I think it was Stafford Associates that has the land that's adjacent to this property along 17, had at least proffered, if I'm correct, $10,000 to add an additional culvert underneath Cardinal Forest to increase that flow rate. Because what actually happens in a major storm is there's a wall of water that comes down. Sorry, it's my New England accent. A wall of water that comes down from the top of Cardinal Forest, Falls Run and backs up right there north of Cardinal Forest Drive until it finally backs up all the way down and flows into Falmouth, flooding Falmouth when there's a heavy rain, as there have been. So I have a lot of those concerns. I'll leave, with a note that on reading here and doing some research, I saw a lawsuit. There's a community outside of Chicago that recently passed an ordinance that any developer who proposes to put in 100 or more housing units in a certain density is required to actually live there for 3 years before as a condition of the approval. So I'm not sure if Mr. Ward was willing to proffer that here in front of our viewers in the community, but I'll leave that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Glenda Kopczynski. I live at 25 Evanshire Drive in Cardinal Forest. Daryl English is my wonderful citizens representative here on the board, and that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm simply asking you to listen to your citizenry. Mr. Ward has sweetened the pot. But Richard, it's not enough. I mentioned a school. You came forth with a site that's really not big enough for a school. Part of it isn't. It would make a lovely park. We did get some swing sets, Mr. Randall. Got some
Gotta
swing
be
sets.
careful about him, man. You get a swing set, he'll go
I
for
know,
it.
I know. I've got to tell you, that it's got to take more than that. We've got the water problems. Those have clearly been outlined. Needless to say, Truslow Road is a death trap. Last week, I almost had a head-on collision. I went to the side of the road. It happens often. And rather than reiterate what my neighbors have offered, there is one little piece of information which will bring the point of restricting the number of townhomes that can be rented. For the last 15 years, I have headed the Welcome Committee in our community. The HOA, our lovely board, wanted us to welcome not only those people who had purchased our home in Cardinal Forest, but they wanted us to keep up with the renters. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible to do that. While it may be legal, it's in the law, but realistically speaking, it just won't work. I sit on the board of directors in North Carolina. We have just succeeded in putting in place a new declaration with 67% of the owners required in order to do that. I've read our declaration over and over, more than once, the Cardinal Forest Declaration. I've looked at the laws in North Carolina and Virginia are about the same as far as declarance rights, as far as guidance for planned communities. And there's a lot of things that are written into law, which when you bring it down to the backyard, it won't work. Thank you, Mr. Ward, for the swing sets. Thank you for your efforts in communicating with the community. I'll say it again. I said it the last time. It's just too soon with Truslow Road, Richard. It's just too soon. And I was up here speaking against this. When did you start? Back in 2007 or 8? It's been a long time ago. But I'm asking you to please listen to the citizens and let's wait a while for this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker we have is Mr. John Kopchak, Jim Howe, and Iris Howe. And then lastly, we'll have Phil Fix, and then we'll open it up to anybody who did not fill out a speaker card.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. My name is John Kopchak. I live at 265 Gentle Breeze Circle. That's in the Hartwood District. And I have been listening to a lot about a very short piece of property, which is, where we're talking about with the new development. But we have to remember that people go places, okay? They don't just drive a mile or two. And once again, I was here the last time and showed a concern about, I do teach at Colonial Forge, and we are full. Okay, I don't know if there's in fact, I'm pretty sure there isn't a new high school on the 5-year plan. Can you proffer that for us? That would be nice, okay. Our middle schools are full. Our elementary schools are becoming very full. We're having a great difficult time in getting new teachers here because our schools are so crowded. Maybe you can proffer us another 5%, that would be nice too. But, and the other thing that I'd like to remember or bring up is the fact that I did show a concern that the roads from where we're talking about to Colonial Forge, to the other schools, are very dangerous. Excuse me. Well, in the time since I spoke till now, we just lost a student. And it could have been avoided. The county needs to really look at its infrastructure. We're dealing with teenagers who think they're going to live forever, and they drive that way. And it's what we're averaging about 1 or 2 a year. So I think we really need to look at the whole county, look at our infrastructure, look at our roads, look at our crowded schools, and really take a long look before we do any more development. So please, let's worry about our kids. Thank you.
Hi, Jim Howe from 201 Gentle Breeze. I live right next door to John. Glad to be here. Hartwood District, of course. Quantico, Montrose, Halifax, Irvington, Mineral, Remington, Metomkin, Cape Charles. They're all small cities and towns in the Commonwealth with less population than would go into Willow Run. Glasgow, Tangier, Belhaven, Hamilton. I could go on for the full 3 minutes because there's 110 towns in this Commonwealth that have less people than the Ward Corporation wants to cram into a small stretch of woods. So let's just be clear, this is a really big development. It's a lot of people and a lot of houses and a lot of cars. It's more homes and people and cars than the Willows. It's more homes and people and cars than Cardinal Forest. It's more homes and people and cars than the Willows and Cardinal Forest combined. It'll have a really big impact. You've heard the roads, the safety, the schools, the environment, the noise, the light pollution, perhaps even crime, who knows? It all leads to a degradation of our quality of life in this part of Stafford County. And it's really something that once the quality of life is degraded, you can't get it back. Once that development's there, it's never going away. So look, it's not the corporation's responsibility to worry about quality of life. They build houses, they make money. There's really only two things standing between this really bad idea and it not happening, and that is this planning commission and our elected board of supervisors. So you protect us in this regard. So I ask you, just say no to this monstrous development. Please don't allow the Ward Corporation to put an entire town's worth of people in a small stretch of woods. Thank you very much for protecting our way of life.
Iris Howe, 201 Gentle Breeze Circle.
I enjoy your comment card, by the way. I was
Thank you.
just showing Commissioner English. So you guys will know what it says. Subject line says roads / how stupid this plan is.
Thank you, thank you. I was talking to my friend Izzy about this whole thing. I was like, yeah, you should come out and, yell at this guy. And she was like, yeah, that stretch of land is probably the last spot in Stafford, Virginia, where it's just the beauty of Virginia. Isn't this state supposed to be like wonderful mountains and plains and beautiful rolling hills and forests? Another thing, I have a lot of friends who live on 610, and they all say, you drive so fast on Truslow. Everyone I see is going like 50, which is true. It's just absurd. What are you going to do to stop that? I mean, come on. No one's going to stop driving insanely fast on that road. But you could make it safer. And the last thing, have we learned nothing from the death of a 16-year-old on one of our roads? It's insane. And I know you wouldn't know because you don't live here, but all the roads are like that. And I think Truslow is more dangerous than Kellogg Mill, honestly. And so is Berea Church. So I think you should funnel all the money you were going to put into this project into saving the roads, and then you'd be, a statewide hero. Honestly. That's all.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Phil Fix.
Hi, my name's Phil Fickus, and I live at 516 General Breeze Circle in the Hartwood District, and I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and also my family to hopefully vote against this new project. So, as previously stated by the speaker before me, he is not from this state, and he won't be here to see the long-term negative effects of this project. And so the proposed application would exceed the county's current and future planned capacity, and recent adjustments the level of shortfall to our fire department and also our police officers, adding this many new people to this area. And as kind of everyone's up here been talking about the traffic on Truslow, yes, he does have a plan for that small stretch of area, but what about the rest of Truslow and especially Kellogg Mill? That girl did just die, and while I'm not a parent yet, I am a big brother, and I have 3 younger siblings who are getting ready to start driving, and it's truly scary thinking of them out on these roads with the condition they're in. And the previous speaker was right, it's not just Truslow, it is Kellogg Mill, it's Berea Church, and when you put this many people into this small of an area, they're going to be driving places, they're going to be on those roads. Those roads are already packed. Trying to get off of Kellogg Mill onto Poplar during rush hour can take you hours. Imagine that with 300 new people in trying to get around on these roads. It's just going to absolutely be awful. It would destroy the area and everyone's quality of life. So that's all I had to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the speaker cards that I have. Would anyone to my left-hand side like to come down and address the Planning Commission that did not fill out a speaker card?
Hi, good evening. Scott Kimball, 180 Summer Breeze Lane. I didn't fill out a card. Mike inspired me. I think in my point of view, this just comes down to money and what's right for Stafford. This is the 3rd time I've heard a presentation by the Ward family. The first presentation I heard from the Ward family was they have a right to make money on this land, and if the plan isn't approved, they'd have to no choice but to strip it for lumber. That's what the statement that was made at the library. I don't think that's true. I believe it's correct. They can build 46 to 49 homes without permission, which is what's taking place right now, just north of Truslow. I believe the accidents are very underreported. I stop monthly for accidents on Truslow. I've lived there for 11 years now. Just Friday, for example, at Enon and Truslow, we had to stop for 2 18-wheelers on Truslow because now with the Waze app, the 18-wheelers know that Truslow is a cut-through, and you have 18-wheelers that are using Truslow to go down towards Enon and hit 1 and bypass that intersection or go up to 95 where the airport is. It's very underrepresented with the accidents that are on Truslow. It's a horrible road now. I do appreciate the attention of schools, but I don't believe anything can be done about schools until 2027. I think that's the last thing the board had said for improvements with the Hartwood area and schools was 2027. And I did want to point out in the slides, it showed the speed limit signs at 30 miles an hour, and the current speed limit on the Truslow is 35. So I'm not sure where that sign came from, but it probably wasn't helpful. There is $4.2 million the Ward family put aside for road improvements, their own roads. Their roads tiding 17 into Truslow. So I would request that this rezoning be denied. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the left-hand side? My left-hand side? Okay, anybody from the right-hand side want to come down and address the Planning Commission?
Good evening. I'm Steve Aycock, and my wife Pam is here. We live at 7 Baldwin Drive in Cardinal Forest in the Hartwood District. I appreciate Mr. Ward's listening to us and meeting with us and the changes he's made, but they don't begin to mitigate the damage that this development will do to our county and our neighborhood. The Truslow needs a major rebuild, which is not in the plan and not in the, nobody's from any authority is talking about that. So it's just going to make another traffic jam that gets worse and worse as more and more homes are developed along Truslow and west of the Willow Run, farther back up that way. So I appreciate his concern, but I do encourage you to reject this plan and send them back to the drawing board.
Thank you. Anyone else on the right-hand side? Oh, I see somebody coming down.
Thanks. My name's John O'Quinn. I live at 3 Gable Court in Cardinal Forest, which is in the Heartwood District. I'm pretty much in agreement with just about every issue that's been brought up this evening. One thing that I wanted to point out that I wasn't is what is the benefit of the retail? If we drive from 95 to that point where this development's going, we have several empty retail units, several. So not only are we going to add 300 houses, we're going to have empty, I'm not sure which sketch is which, if it's the 2 buildings, the one bigger building, and then the one strip center that has 8 or 9 units. Is that what the current plan is? Or
There's already B2 zoning on the front.
Yeah, and this is not a question and answer, so you can ask us and then we'll answer it. Yeah.
But either way, if it's the strip center that has 800 to 1,600 square feet, 9 units, I mean, we have several of those already that are empty. We're building another one beside Geico. We'll wait to see how empty that one's going to be. We have a huge shopping center where Food Line used to be. It's empty. We're having, how do I say this? The type of jobs generally for these retail centers are not the highest paying. They're fine jobs. If they're supposed to be for summer help, it's just not a good compatibility for what us residents that have lived here 15, 20 years would like to see at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else on the right-hand side like to come down? And if there's anyone after this young lady, you can go ahead and get in line so then we know whether or not we need to close it or keep it open.
I would like to thank you very much for referring to me as a young lady. I can sit down now. My name is Angela Minnick. I live at 400 Gentle Breeze Circle in the Willows in the Hartwick District. I was not prepared to speak tonight, so if I stumble over some of my words, please forgive me. I would like to speak and just address a couple of the improvements that I feel that Mr. Ward has offered that seem rather nebulous to me. First of all is the one that concerned you as well, with the 10% of the townhomes having to be owner-occupied. It puts I know how hard it is in the Willows for the homeowners association to talk to somebody about the roof line of their shed, let alone trying to evict someone who has moved into a home that they don't own. Also, given that there are 223 townhomes and 394 homes altogether, that leaves 171 homes that are a combination of single families and what are referred to as village homes, which in my vision, since I don't see it in the map, is nothing but a townhome separated by a little alley. And so all of those could be rentals as well. And I think that, like you said, the first owners are maybe the second owners, but when you get to be third and fourth and fifth owners and the houses aren't as pristine as they used to be, people have a tendency to not be as careful with their homes. And that's when I think crime can get involved and be part of the community, and we don't need that. The other thing I would like to address that people haven't is the shared road with Royal Farms cutting all the way through. When we in the Willows first moved in, the roads were maintained and owned by Mr. Ward's brother-in-law.
We're related.
Yeah. Okay. Either way, it was still Ward Corporation, and we had, in order to be able to turn over the roads to the state, he had to improve the roads. And improving the roads at that time involved going, I'm sorry. Oh.
It's okay, you have a minute.
Involved going around and putting patches of blacktop. And then it was turned over to the state, and the state has done nothing since, and we are overrun with potholes and cracks in the roads and things like that. And we only have 100 and 100-plus units in the Willows. Can you imagine using that road as a thoroughfare through? I don't know. I don't see how they'll be able to come back and maintain it after the place is built out. And the last one is, somebody already addressed it, the traffic issue. Straightening out that portion of Truslow Road will just encourage people to go faster so that they can hit this gentleman's yard even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Okay, I don't see anybody jumping out of their seat, so we're going to close the public hearing, and we're going to bring it back up to the Planning Commission so that Mr. Ward can come back up and answer any questions. I know I wrote down a lot of questions that people brought up in the public hearing, so I'll ask you those. Typically, it's the applicant first. So do you want to come up?
Sure. I'd first like to say we'd appreciate however you vote on this tonight, and I promise that we'll go work on this plan some more. We have a few more ideas, but that we'll continue to work on this plan.
Okay. Before you go, hang on just a second. So I wrote down questions as they were coming up just so that we could, the whole point of the
And
public
I may
hearing
defer
is.
to Blake and to
Okay, and
about
that's fine.
traffic,
He can come up and answer them. Okay. The first one is your proffer plan fixing the curve in the road by Mr. Crady's house, or the dip that he explained that VDOT had pointed out where the cars are running into his yard?
So, Mike,
Do you-
do you have that exhibit of the proposed traffic improvements? Yes.
Computer, please.
There you go. This is probably the best exhibit to show. So it's correct. We do have the right-of-way and the ability to straighten out the curves where we have the property. We do not have the right-of-way along that curve to, in essence, straighten Truslow. We put everything that we could possibly do within our property and within the right-of-way to fix Truslow Road from sort of, say, Cardinal Drive all the way to Berea Church. There is, I have been given the heads up that there is, with all these accidents, there's a potential, and we do have one potential possible fix to slow the traffic down as well.
Okay, so but the short answer is no.
So yes, I mean, like I said, we're doing everything we can within the right-of-way. I believe that I would have to access, and I can't promise that because I don't have that. Like, if I had the right-of-way, yeah, but we don't have the right-of-way. So we're doing everything we can within the right-of-way, which is why there's the guardrail for the overcorrecting, right, along that stretch, and the tree clearing and the signs and so forth, and everything we can do in front of our property.
Okay.
Can you show
Go
me
ahead,
there,
Mr.
if you got rid of the blue line, could you show me where you're talking about straightening Truslow Road for
So
me?
Truslow straightens sort of from here to here, and we widen it. And
Show me how it would swim. Would you get rid of those curves?
Yeah,
Everything
so
would
those
be to the
curves-
south, correct? Everything would be to the
It's
south?
not drawing, hang on.
Yeah, so I have two exhibits that I could show you guys that would detail those two intersection realignments. But I do hear some concerns about how that becomes a faster way to travel. And there is a potential fix for that as well. That it's a fix that's not going to make everybody happy. It would slow everybody down, but it's
Spikes
not
in
going
the
to
road?
make
No.
everybody happy. What's that?
Spikes in the road?
Yeah. Rumble strip. There's lots of things that people can do, but nobody that lives there is going to like them because I'm not sure that that's exactly about that. But my goal was to make this road as safe as I possibly could. But I do have a couple exhibits. It's on Cool Breeze. It's moving the intersection south.
Mm-hmm. Both of them would come south into your property,
Correct. Yeah, both of them come south
How
into
far
the property.
south would they come? 100 feet?
I think we scheduled the Cool Breeze one somewhere between 18. Final engineering's not done, right? You have to have site distance easements and everything else that goes along with that.
Yep.
But so we believe that people come around these curves and they can't see, and VDOT has site distance easements, and so we can straighten those out so that they become much safer. With the increased traffic that we'd be putting on these roads, and it's not 6,000, as she said, it's about 10,000 vehicle trips per day. So I'm not sure where the number of 6 came. It's more like 3,000, but just to be more correct about the traffic study. Some of it is some of it is because of the commercial that people say isn't going to ever be built, but so it is. The residential has only half of that impact. But I believe that there are certain ways to slow down the traffic on that road.
Okay, the next question that was brought up from a resident was the commercial question. And
Yeah.
I think you started to chime in on that, so do you want to?
Sure. My first response would be not all the commercial that's empty is across the street from the Walmart. This is a hub, It's a very popular hub now. The development's been happening rapidly. Royal Farms, Lidl, and other, this is becoming sort of a retail hub, and it's gaining traction. And they also like to be at four-way intersections. So with the Stafford Plaza Drive, which is across from Village Parkway, becomes very desirable, just like the Royal Farms went in there.
You're not talking nail places,
No, and
dry
we've actually
cleaners
said,
and the same old
we've
stuff
actually
that
said
goes-
no to Tractor Supply. We've said no.
You said
because-
no to Tractor Supply?
Yeah, we said no to Tractor Supply.
Send them to Garrisonville Road.
Rather have that than the nail place.
So that type of, and big box is really dead. Originally, this site that was the Edens and Avens site was 23 acres and slated for big box. That was done in, I think, 96 or something, and nothing's happened with it since. So we think it's more of a sit-down restaurant, inline retail to service the neighborhood.
Okay. Any more questions on that one? I got a whole list here, so keep on going. Okay. Couple of residents came up and spoke to the issues regarding flooding in Cardinal Forest. I vaguely remember you mentioning that you were going, at the last meeting, you were going to meet with them and try to mitigate some of that flooding. Did you do that? And has there been a plan to mitigate their?
So there's two plans, from what I understand in my 4 years of conversations with Cardinal Forest, is that there's two issues that face Cardinal Forest. One is the Brown River that runs behind Amber and Gable Courts, and there's one other one, and I have a map. And what she was talking about, the 8 acres of drainage, is undisturbed land that still creates the Brown River that sheds into their property during the rainy season. So our plan was to immediately solve that problem for them by putting in mitigation outside the 50-foot buffer that would allow to get the water into Falls Run. So we did, at the last community meeting, talk and understand that there is some backing up in the floodplain at the crossing of Cardinal Forest Drive, but we haven't gotten enough feedback from the community about what that real issue is. And I told them that we'd be willing to work with them as we cross Falls Run. And let me state this about the environment. The only issue, the only place we impact any environmentally sensitive areas is the actual allowable road crossing through the collector road, which is supposed to take the traffic out of Cardinal Forest neighborhood and bring it away from a street that has driveways on it where kids play to the collector road, which is a street that has no houses on it whatsoever. So the goal of the collector road was to move traffic out of Cardinal Forest. That was the original intention, to say, we understand this is a concern and this is how we are addressing it. Most of the things we've done on this plan are a concern that we've heard from the Willows or Cardinal Forest, our neighbors, and our ability to try to mitigate that as well.
Okay. Still on some of the water issues, someone mentioned that you're building 10-year flood storm management and that you're in a 100-year floodplain. And I think your engineer spoke to that a little bit, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to expand.
I'm Blake Smith, Smith Engineering. Yes, the on-site ponds are designed for 10-year detention. We also design them to control water quality and quantity and to release at pre-developed rates. The 100-year floodplain does go through the site with Falls Run. However, the storm crossing, the road crossing of Falls Run, the culverts that run under that road are designed for the 100-year event, assuming that all the surrounding property is fully developed without detention measures. So that culvert is typically over-designed.
And that's the same culvert that they're having flooding issues inside Cardinal Forest because it's in Falls Run flooding into Cardinal Forest?
I don't know if that's the designed headwater, the designed backflow that they're experiencing, or whether that culvert was in fact under-designed. If there is a problem, though, Mr. Ward has agreed to examine that and potentially improve that with the permitting that we would be doing with our road crossing, the permitting that we would do with FEMA.
Okay. I definitely think that warrants some further follow-up and working with Cardinal Forest and Falls Run to determine where that flooding is happening and whether or not that's adequate, for sure. The other drainage question that I had before you sit down, I'm sorry. Somebody mentioned the 8.7 acres is a drainage area that is being dedicated to the county for the park/potential elementary school space. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's the Brown River that Rich talked about. There is basically, I think it's closer to 10 acres that is draining through the backyards of some of the neighbors in Cardinal Forest. And as Mike is handing out, this is an exhibit that proposes a ditch that would intercept that water and take it down to Falls Run directly instead of going through their properties down to Falls Run.
And this is on, I'm just trying to orient myself with this map here. This is part of the 10 acres that's being dedicated for the school/park use?
It is, and.
So we really wouldn't build a school on that 10 acres then, because then they'd be
No,
swimming.
this would still work with the school site there.
Sorry, Mike,
So-
could you give them the school exhibit as well? Sorry.
Yeah.
The only grading, right?
If a school site was there, we actually did a layout with a school site, and it would fit with extra land that the county could use for other things if they chose. This interceptor ditch would still, the school would still work with that interceptor ditch.
Mr. English? did you-
If you did that, I think you donate that land back and the county starts to try to build on it, and they're gonna run into big issues. It might cost them more than what the land is worth, as it sounds like to me, if you did something like that. So I don't know if that's even a good scenario by donating lot right there with that water problem you got, so.
Well, I guess my other question is, okay, so you're giving 10 acres, but it's 34 acres total.
So 10 of
What
it's gonna be
do- Yeah, so it really knocks it down to 24. And then it's an elementary school, so is there going to be fencing around that area that the water is essentially going to be collecting? I just think that's very dangerous. We have another rezoning in front of us tonight after this, that there's a little pond, and it's a very big concern.
I
that
imagine
kids could
whoever
get
would
in.
be doing the design for the school would put
In
safety
other words, the
measures in
county would be
place.
eating it, that's probably what's
Yeah,
lined up.
and then
Probably.
how large is a school site typically in the county? Do you know the answer to that?
I believe it's
Elementary
20. The school site that is on that exhibit in front of you is the same elementary school site that
Annie
is at
Moncure.
Moncure, and that could even be moved closer to Trustlow Road. I believe there's another 8 or 9 acres up there in flatter land.
Okay. All right. Yep.
If I could explain, the drainage is just to show how much acreage actually sheds from my property to the Cardinal Forest property. If you look at the strip there, that's the 50-foot of undisturbed. My approach to the solving of the problem of the flooding of Cardinal Forest is to take step one, and step one is this water comes unchecked onto Cardinal Forest. They were saying it's about 10 acres. It doesn't make it unbuildable. It's just like you have a neighbor who has a hill and you're below it. The water always runs downhill. What we're doing is we're channeling that water to get back to Falls Run before it actually sheds to Cardinal Forest. That would be step one. This would eventually, the clearing that is done is only the very tight lines. All the other stuff is the existing topo. So one of the residents that I spoke to about elementary school 18 talked about hydrology, and what they liked about it is this site sits high, and like I said, the site that we put onto the land dedication exhibit is exactly the same as Moncure, which is 25 acres, and it does have an additional like 8 acres, which could be for parks and recreation, fields, we don't like to say it, but portable classrooms if needed, depending on surge years and things like that.
Okay, Mr. English, go ahead.
So the property's got a slight slope on it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it does. It sits on a bluff. It sits up high.
Yeah, do you have the topography on a slide? You don't, do you?
I gave it.
I have it. No,
Oh,
I
you
have it here, but it's not on a slide anywhere, correct?
No, and if any of the residents, this information was available to all of the residents that came to the community.
Okay, so just so everybody's clear, what we received was a topography map that shows the slope of the area
Correct.
It shows the wider the lines, the more gentle the slope, the steeper, the closer the lines are together, the steeper the slope. And so all you're talking about is where they're going to build. This is going to be the back part of the school, and it's a very gentle slope that drains, just like your yard does with grass.
Correct.
It drains down to the back of your yard. That's what this is.
And I brought
It's-
additional
It's
copies.
only at the very bottom down here where it gets very, very close, where the land is very steep and where they couldn't build anything, but where there may be some drainage abilities where
We'd
we
actually
can
be
move the
lowering,
water.
it's currently steeper, and we'd actually be lowering it to sort of like a.
Sure,
All right.
sure, but where they're planning the school,
Is
it's a
up
very
higher.
gentle slope, and it's just like your yard.
And if anybody needs these, I have additional copies
Sure,
for them as well.
absolutely.
Okay. Another question, kind of moving away from the stormwater management, is why are you designing this to access Truslow Road versus just having it marry up with Holly Corner or Royal Farms only?
I'm going to let Kevin take
Okay.
some of the transportation issues.
Thanks, Rich. For the record, Kevin Sitzman with Grove Slade Associates. VDOT actually has a requirement that when you make a road network addition, in other words, if you have a public street that comes into the network that VDOT would maintain, that connection needs to meet certain criteria, one of which is connectivity to other public streets. So in a development of this size, VDOT would expect connections to the north, connections to the south, connections to the east, and connections to the west, unless those are precluded by certain conditions. Obviously, if you had a railroad track or an airport or something like that, you wouldn't put a road through it. To the east, where Cardinal Forest is already developed and there's not stub-out streets to connect with, then those connections wouldn't be required. But VDOT would actually require connections to the south, connections to the north up to Truslow, and then stub-outs to the west, which are also shown on the plan.
Okay. Let me see if I have any other transportation questions on here.
Madam Chairman, while you're looking that up as a point of information, the fire marshal also regulates the number of access points. Their guideline is that no more than 200 homes be on a single access point, so they would require a connection out to some other public street.
Okay. All right. Hopefully that answers the question for the person who asked it. I just have two more resident questions. The first is somebody had said that they weren't sure what kind of homes you were going to be building, and if they would stick with the rural character of the Cardinal Forest and the Willows. Have you proffered for, I guess, the
We did
public
proffer some
here?
size and some facade treatments as well.
And so what's your target price range for your single families, your villas, and then your townhomes?
You know, I mean, we have to look at 2 or 3 years down the road. I mean, obviously, look at the phasing of this plan. We would start on the south side with the commercial, and then we would pull the road across. 2 to 3 years before anything started, barring some economic situation. I mean, we're really not there yet. We don't have a partner that would come in and build yet. So we do have conditions that are, we think, stay with this character of Stafford, size-wise, bedrooms-wise. But as far as getting into the colors of the exterior, we haven't gotten that far with the design.
How about the cost?
Would you like for me to guess and speculate? I know I'm being
Well,
recorded on camera.
to be honest, I've never had a rezoning come before us without some type of estimated. Even Embry Mill said this is the type of house we're going to build. It's going to be between
I think our
400 and
townhouses-
475.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I think our townhouses are probably 300,000 and our singles are probably north of 400,000.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant before we move forward? I know you have a question for staff. Anything else? Anybody? You've been so quiet today. No. Three people are not here, so I felt compelled. I had to ask all their questions for them. Oh, you have some questions for Mr. Ward?
I do have some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. I appreciate you meeting with me. I appreciate it. And it's more than just a swing set. Thank you very much. The question I have is when you reduced the land and are looking at donating land to the schools, I know you reduced some of the townhomes, and I know the purpose of the townhomes But is there a reason why we reduced as many single-family homes as you did?
The best site for a school was also the best site for single families. So we reduced the single families because that was the best spot for the school. It removed the school from 17 far enough. It put it in a spot where it wasn't surrounded by other residential. It created a buffer to both 17 and Truslow, which I thought was a good idea considering there was going to be elementary school kids there. The only access was that collector road with no houses on that. So we removed single families because that was the best spot for the school.
Okay, do you see the issue that everybody's having with townhomes?
I do.
Okay.
I hear you.
And it's the devil's in the details sometimes, especially with townhomes. We all wish we could live in single families, but many of us started
in a townhouse
somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's a good thing for young families to have a place to live in a nice neighborhood, in a nice townhome. Okay, many of us started that way. If we built single-family homes everywhere and there were no townhouses anywhere, we wouldn't have the ability for young families to start in Stafford. They just wouldn't be there. So townhomes are a necessity in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate what I'm hearing. I understand. So the other question I have is with proffers. I know this is a balancing act between what you're already donating to the county through the efforts to Truslow Road and also for the land. But the cash proffers seem to be a little low, comparatively speaking to the recommendations from the county. Even if you add everything together, it still gets to about half. Is there a particular reason why we didn't make more of an effort to put more cash proffers into the county's hands, especially regarding the schools, so on and forth?
With the current, I'll call it a collaboration, albeit a little bit forced with the neighbors as well, and some of these new concerns coming up, we wanted to focus really on solving now issues, and now issues are the safety of Truslow Road. We believe even with the increased traffic, and there's data behind it to support that we can dramatically reduce the accidents and the severity of them by straightening the Truslow Road and doing the safety improvements. What I think gets missed a little bit is that the wedge widening does some stuff, and while it's not planned for this, the road gets widened from its sort of 8 and 8 sides. It gets widened to 10 with 2 feet of shoulders. It makes for a lot more room, and I know that everybody would like for us to solve all the problems of Stafford County with 394 houses, but we know that we're making an impact here, and we want to solve the problems here. And so I know that when we get to the Board of Supervisors, that will also be a conversation as well about cash proffers. I wanted to try to create the best possible plan through the Planning Commission and then and do that and understand what all those costs are so that when I got to the Board of Supervisors, they couldn't say you and the Planning Commission came up with a bad plan. You guys did the best. And like I said, we do have some tweaks and we're going to work on it. I promise you that. I promise you.
And then one last question, if you don't
No,
mind.
you go ahead.
The improvements to Truslow Road that you're talking about, and you mentioned the wedge widening. Is that in accordance with the Stafford County's efforts to wedge widen other areas of the county's roads?
The section in front of our property that we are in control of, we're going beyond that.
Okay.
Right? Where we can do wedge widening, we will, but that's where the right-of-way becomes an issue.
Sure, absolutely.
Right.
I understand.
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's all I have now. Thank you.
Mr. English, any more questions? Mr. McPherson? Okay, if you'll just oblige me, I just have two more questions. So this is not the first time you've been in front of us. Well, this planning commission, I guess. There was a proposal several years ago for a rezoning. And I do know that Truslow Road was a major concern back then. Do you know of any improvements to Truslow Road that have happened between now or back then and today?
Truslow Road, if we speak about Truslow Road as a whole, we speak about Truslow Road in just this area. So Truslow Road obviously was straightened. There's now Old Truslow and Truslow, which is over by England Run. So those improvements were done. Those improvements were done with the $3,000, under $3,000 a lot impact fees that were paid for by every permit that's in this transportation shed. Okay? there's those you wait until the building permit is issued, and then the county receives the $3,000. The 98 homes that are going at Liberty Hall, they all pay $3,000 impact fees, and none of that goes to Truslow Road at this point. None of that $300,000 that they'll get for those 98 houses goes to improve this road. The proffer that we made on this is that we'll improve Truslow Road before we connect to it. We'll solve some of the, we're not going to get everybody to stop going fast. We're not going to get everybody from, speeding or drinking and driving. Like, it's just a new community will never solve those problems. What we can do is we can design the roads to today's safety standards. The curve in which the gentleman speaks about is a horizontal and vertical curve at the same time, which is exactly what throws the people off. And so that is the curve that has all the accidents and all the very impactful photos that we may or may not be able to address with additional right-of-way from these homeowners, but that's up to them. They have to be able to work with us for us to be able to make those improvements and to try to make Truslow Road safe, because really, it's about making Truslow safe. So if you'll indulge me one more second about the 2002 rezoning that Ruth Carloni spoke about, that she was on, that plan passed the Planning Commission 7-0, and then went to the board and did not pass. So we had Parks and Rec, Planning Commission approvals back at that point, and at that point, 17 had not been widened. I thought 17 would have gotten widened a lot faster from 2002 to where we are at 2019. So some of the residents talk about why now? Well, 17's now fixed. People may not like the fix, but the upgrades which VDOT did to 17 are now complete. So we waited 17 years before bringing back a rezoning. And at the time, our supervisor was a supervisor then, and at that time, we did not have a connection to 17. All of the traffic dumped on Truslow Road. So I feel like our plan is better now. We will be bringing people from the new community to 17 on a collector road that's safe and not like Cardinal Forest Drive or where driveways that are sloped down and the kids ride. So the plan that's out there now is a collaboration of waiting and understanding what a lot of the neighborhood's concerns are. And we want to proffer to fix these roads before something bad does happen again. We want to proffer to fix these roads before we make a connection to Truslow Road.
Okay, I guess my only rebuttal to that statement would be that since 2002, the resident population has increased significantly. So even the improvements to Route 17 aren't anywhere close to being adequate to handle the traffic that it sees today, because it's a thoroughway. People from Bristow, Manassas, they're all over the place. They come and travel Route 17. They always have. That's sort of been a connector road to get to I-95. So that's a huge challenge.
There's a lot of by right development in Hartwood.
Yeah, don't even get me started on that.
That doesn't. Yeah.
And just coincidentally, before I walked in, I had 2 certified letters of 2 additional by right developments that will be coming with 0 approvals, 32 lots at Tackett's Mill and Poplar Road in the Hartwood District, and Liberty Hall on Truslow Road, another 49 lots. And he just got 3. So
development should pay for the problems they create, and hopefully some of the ones that...
You're absolutely right. And I think that the place that we're stuck is that the state has created a very dangerous piece of legislation. And that, and meaning that, and I know several local members have tried to fix it, but they've been unsuccessful. And it puts us in a really difficult situation, because when you have a subdivision plan legislation that allows developers to build by right 50 homes or less without 0 approvals, these little pocket subdivisions are popping up everywhere, and you have places like Liberty Hall or Dries where they put 2 next door to each other and they get 100 homes. So it makes it really difficult when you're coming in, you're trying to proffer things and make improvements for us to really fathom a rezoning, to add to the things that we have absolutely no say on. So it makes it a little difficult. So my last question, then I'm going to stop, is how many times have you advocated through FAMPO or Smart Scale or with any of your state legislators at the General Assembly between 2002 and now for funding to improve Truslow Road? Because I know you can't fix it yourself. Have you ever, because if I had a big investment, I would be knocking on the door to my legislators every day trying to make sure that my road was on the Smart Scale project, that my road was getting funding to get improved so that I could build my project. Have you done any of that yet?
Most of the conversations that we have around roads regard the outer connector with us. And so no, I have not advocated. am familiar with FAMPO, I am familiar with CTV, and I am familiar that most of the dollars, every time I ask, they talk about 95. We got to fix 95 first. They kind of put your hand up at you. We got to fix 95 first before they talk about putting improvements onto local roads.
And that's our issue. So when we're asking for them to trim the trees, I mean, we can't get VDOT out here. We literally can't get VDOT to maintain our roads, fix our potholes, and keep up with what we already have. So it's a huge we're at a crossroads, and it's a problem. So I know that's not your issue, but I just had to ask what has been done on your end. So anyway, that's all my questions. Anybody else have anything?
The only time VDOT comes up is when there's a tragedy. That's when they'll step up. That's it. Yeah, okay.
Okay, you good? All right, thank you so much
Thank you.
for obliging us. Did you have a question, Mr. Randall, for Mr. Zaraf?
I know, I think we got an answer. It was just where we're going to be straightening the line in relation to, straightening Trestle in relation to Willow Run and in relation to, I think, 1393 Trestle Road, where the young man had, where his park property was. Do you have a relation to where that is? How far that would be from? I don't know if you can identify his lot on that map.
Computer, please. That lot, I believe it is in this area. One of these. Right? Two. Yeah. It's
Right in the middle of the guardrail.
so the.
Now put the line in where we're going to straighten Trestle Road.
Okay. I think it's basically going to be. I'm not certain how far, if it goes anywhere beyond that, but
I
that's my.
see where now the concern comes in. If you straighten that, you're going to pick up steam going into that curve. Yeah.
If we're trying to regulate driver habits, that's a whole nother discussion, a whole nother issue. If we're trying to regulate driver habits, that's a whole nother issue. You know, I could put speed bumps along that whole line and get it down to 20 miles per hour. Right? But that's not the answer anybody wants.
Yeah.
Right? Of course not.
The road will
Right?
transition.
So if I straighten it and I make it better, I'll tell you if the county's going to.
Okay, can you, we have to have order. We can't all be talking over one another. The public hearing is over. Mr. Randall, you have the floor.
Thank you. So if the county, based on what we saw with the wedge widening and the straightening of the roads, what we're hearing is that we want to widen the road, we want to straighten the road, only to the fact that we don't want to do it because it will increase the speed on those roads. That would be disingenuous to actually straightening the roads and making them safer by widening them and giving more access and more right-of-ways and more sight, right? So do you think widening Trestle Road to this point up to would be advantage to the county?
I think there seems to me, and I'm not a transportation planner, so that there's going to need to be these improvements are going to have to transition back into
Sure.
the existing.
As there are now when we make wedge widenings for portions of roads.
And it does seem that that issue with that curve is going to have to should be addressed as part of it.
Okay.
Would be the logical thing to do.
So maybe if they went down another 100 feet or 200 feet and straightened out that whole road all the way down to his property, that could be an advantage, correct?
I think it definitely would.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any more questions for staff?
No.
Okay. Mr. English, this is in your district.
For me being here, living in Stafford all my life and all that stuff, Trestle Road is like it's probably going to be on the back burner of ever getting fixed. And I think even if it had a 4-lane highway on Trestle Road, this project is not going to work because we got schools involved, we got public safety involved, and everything like that. So there's a whole lot of gamut. I appreciate them coming back with doing what they did as far as answering some of the questions and fixing some of the problems, but I still think this is too early to be doing something like that and providing this many houses. So as of that, I'm going to make a motion to deny RC 16151-330 at this time.
So we have a motion on the floor to deny the reclassification and proffer amendment for Willow Run. Do we have a second for discussion?
Second.
So we have a second by Commissioner McPherson. Mr. English, do you have any discussion?
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate what they've done as far as bringing back and offering what they have. But again, it's Stafford County. It's just, you can tell this Memorial Weekend how it was. Just the traffic. All it takes is one snafu, and it just backs up problems. Trustlow Road is bad. It's no way getting around it. And like I said, unless it was a 4-lane. And with 4-lane, I still can't, that's too many houses on that road as far as I'm concerned. And we're not building schools until 2027, and it's just not the right time. So that's why I'm voting against this.
Mr. McPherson?
Yes, well, I too do appreciate the efforts made by the applicant to what you call the now fixes. The effects of 394 units go well beyond just the local area right around your subdivision, which is why also I cannot support this. It's not just the fixes along those roads, it's everywhere else around Stafford that's going to be affected. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Mr. Randall, would you like to comment?
I do. It's interesting, we have these developments, and it's tough for me to, everybody wants Stafford to be a nice county. Everybody wants to maintain the rural aspects of Stafford. But we all know that's not going to happen. It'll never be more rural than it is today. We're not going to take away houses. We're not going to stop developments. You just saw by right how many we have by rights. There's 300 or 400 or 500 houses every year that are being built by right, which means we get nothing. County gets nothing. Nothing for schools, nothing for roads, nothing for parks, nothing for first responders, nothing. And so there's got to be some level of consideration when somebody's willing to come in and do this kind of work. All right? Stafford County does transportation. They had a transportation evaluation that the county did, a very comprehensive study of every road in Stafford County. A member of Stafford County with VDOT went and traveled every single road in Stafford County. They had presentations, public presentations. I went to one of the public presentations, and there was 3 people there that weren't related to the county, and I was one of them. 3. It would have been great to get this number of people at that comprehensive review to tell the county that Trustlow Road needed to be on the list. So consequently, Trustlow Road is not on the list for improvements. Not now, and not, it's way down on the list. It's 12th on the list of things that can be fixed. And that's only one small section. There's another section of Trustlow Road that is under analysis, Cambridge Street to Plantation Drive. It's under analysis, further analysis. What does that mean to the county? Well, it means if we get a $20 million windfall, that we may look now at that as part of a wedge widening program. So what I would tell you is that Trustlow Road, as Mr. English has mentioned, has no chance of being fixed at all in the future because it's not on the top of the list. They did a very thorough analysis. They did a very comprehensive list. They graded it out. They scored it. There were probably 10 different things that they used, and it's not on the list. You know, you got to give credit to Mr. Ward who's willing to come in and fix a mile of it. Because right now you won't get a mile fixed at all. And it will continue to be what it is right now. In fact, as we build these by right, it will get worse. You know, I've heard it said we don't want to straighten it because they're going to go faster. I drove that road. 35 miles an hour, if you follow the speed limit. But I would be willing to bet that nobody drives 35 miles an hour, including the people that are in this room. Right? And so that's the problem we have. I would love to be able to put something in there to stop that. Okay, this is hard. All right. I appreciate the effort that was put into it. I know where it comes. I know where we're going. But I need this kind of level of when the county does something, when they have a smart growth initiative for rural and urban development, and the fact that we are talking about how we disincentivize, in the rural areas and we want to increase in the urban areas, we need this level of input at those as well, because that's going to make the difference for where Stafford County goes in the future. It's great that you bring it to us here, but the board needs to see it at these other level places so that we can make decisions that will help you. Okay, bringing it to us in this situation is, especially when they did this comprehensive road analysis 3 months ago. They didn't hear one word about Trestle Road. We didn't hear about them. Well, it was, trust me, it was well documented. It was well announced.
Sir, if his plan doesn't get us.
Okay, this public hearing,
anyway.
the public hearing is over.
I understand. So anyway, that's just my comment about we need to. I would love this. This would have been great when the county was taking inputs from residents. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. So I guess that leaves me, since we're down 3 people this evening. Ms. Danette, I sent you some slides. Can you pull those up on the computer? I do want to thank Mr. Ward. The plan is very drastically different from what you came to us with back in March to now. I just don't think it's palatable yet. So I have a couple of notes where I think, as you're moving forward and reaching out with the residents, some things that we received as public feedback that you really should consider. The first is negotiating easements for additional improvements onto Truslow Road. The second is remove the townhomes from your plan. The third is to determine if it's feasible or possible to hook up county water and sewer to the other subdivisions. I don't know if people want that, but 3 or 4 people emailed that to me, that they wanted the ability to hook up to county water and sewer because they were on well and septic and were concerned that their wells could be drying up. I don't know if that's palatable for everybody. I just wanted to pass that information along to you because I'm sure it'll come up with the Board of Supervisors as well. I do believe that the 25 acres of land, or the 35 acres of land being dedicated is a nice gesture, but I struggle with the financials of actually building a new school there. It's just the land, it's not the school, and the proffers are not adequate to meet the needs of what your population is going to be utilizing on the roads, the schools, the public safety, the infrastructure, that kind of stuff. And then I think lastly is we've got to have the state has to prioritize these roads. Mr. Randall mentioned the VDOT project or the Board of Supervisors road safety analysis. I realize there's no way you can possibly widen and repave all of Truslow Road. It would cost more than you would even get if you sold all the houses without any cost. And that's how expensive it is to do these road improvements. But we need help. We need help from people like you and the public to advocate to the state leaders that Stafford County has got to be a priority. Alexandria, Fairfax, Prince William, they're always the priority. And in Stafford County, we're not the priority. So we have to start making noise, and we're failing our children. We're failing our residents miserably. I grew up here, I was born here. I was born off of Garrisonville Road, grew up off of Hope Road, which is a very dangerous road. I just think that we've grown so much that we've got to do something. And just adding more houses and more houses without any improvements or infrastructure is very dangerous. So I have these pictures. After the tragic accident a few weeks ago, a resident in the county started documenting the dangerous roads in Stafford to bring awareness. So if you can take these to your legislators, if we can take these photographs of Truslow Road. He went and met with residents over the weekend, on Memorial Day weekend, to find out the dangerous points. His name is Arthur Spire. And he documented every one of the spots on Truslow that need emergency attention because these are dangerous. And I think the one that stuck out to me is where the road sort of drops off. And if you run off the road, you're definitely going to flip a car. And to add, I think it's this picture right here, to add the amount of traffic that you're looking at, because the people will travel on Trustlow. I mean, they're not going to go on 17. I was just headed to an NAACP event last Friday, and I live on Garrisonville, and my Waze took me the back way to Trustlow, to sort of downtown Fredericksburg area. So it's a challenge. So you have to, I really understand, that you're trying to work with these folks, but we're trying to solve a big problem here. And so we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I think I'm definitely voting no on this project tonight. And I agree with all of the comments that the public made. And so I would take a really good hard look at this and about the timing and determine if you want to proceed, what that procedure looks like. So anyway, I'm finished my comments. Anybody else have anything else to chime in on? All right, so we can go ahead and vote. And the motion on the floor, just to remind everyone, from Commissioner English with a second from Commissioner McPherson, is to deny the rezoning application. Okay, so the motion carries 3-1. So at this point, you'll move on to the Board of Supervisors. We're going to take a 10-minute recess for everyone, so you guys can trickle out and meet with your planning commissioner, Mr. English, if you have any leftover questions for him. But please continue to follow this as it reaches the Board of Supervisor and continue to interact with Mr. Ward as it moves forward. So we'll break for about 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at 8:50. On to item number 2 on the agenda. Mr. McPherson, you had something you wanted to do.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, and Lauren, please make sure I word this properly, to reconsider the vote that we just took regarding item 1, RC 16151330, reclassification and proffer amendment for Willow Run. Thank you.
Okay, so we have to vote on the reconsideration first, or does he make the alternative, the new motion, before we move on?
You vote on whether to reconsider first?
Okay, got it. So we have a motion on the floor to reconsider. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. McPherson and a second by Commissioner English to reconsider the vote on item number 1. Any discussion, gentlemen?
No.
Okay, go ahead and vote. Motion to reconsider. Okay, motion carries 4-0. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
This is on me. I hit the wrong button. I intended to vote yes to the denial, and I did not. I hit no to.
I even clarified. This is to deny.
There are no explanations sometimes for actions, so don't ask for one. All right?
Okay.
So this is on me.
All right, so you're making a motion to now deny the reclassification of the proffer amendment.
Make your original motion.
Of Willow
Do you want me
Run.
to do what? Yeah, just make your original motion. Okay. All right. We'll make a motion again that I'd like to deny RC 161. Is that right?
Yeah, I thought Bart made
That's fine, the motion's already on the floor, but if you want to restate it, I think that's.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm making a motion.
That's a second, because you made the motion already.
Right.
So you made a motion, Mr. Randall, right? Isn't that what happened?
I think the original motion is on the floor, because you've already voted to reconsider
Oh,
it. So
okay,
it's,
got it.
if you just want to, yeah, if you just want to
Okay.
restate the motion, I
Okay.
think that's good.
Okay,
You don't have
so
to
Sure.
go
go ahead
through
and
the motion.
restate it.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to deny RC 161511330, reclassification and proffer amendment, Willow Run.
And we have a second?
Second as before.
Okay, any discussion, gentlemen?
No.
Now, would you like to make your discussion, your disclaimer? No.
Yes, I will make my disclaimer that this is for me, and I hit the.
Yeah.
Yes, I hit the wrong button, so I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead and vote. Okay, this motion carries 4-0 to deny the reclassification and proffer amendment of Willow Run. Now, moving on to item number 2, which is the reclassification of Cherryview Landing. However, Commissioner Bain is not here this evening, and it's customary on the Planning Commission to always grant a deference when the district member representative is unable to attend, and we would be moving forward with either an approval or a denial. So I would ask somebody to make a motion that we defer this until the June 12th meeting.
Madam Chair, I move that we move RC 1815-2389, item 2, to the June 12th meeting.
Thank you.
I second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, go ahead and vote for the deferral to June 12th. Motion carries. Now we have another new member, 5-0. Okay, moving on, item number 3, which is the comprehensive plan amendment, bicycle pedestrian facilities plan update. Brian, you went very in-depth on this last time, so we don't expect you to do that again if you just want to hit the high notes.
Just 2 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, just,
Page by
yeah.
page, line by line.
If you could be done by
It's open
10:30.
for 2.5, but all right. So this was presented to the commission at the May 15th meeting, and as you said, went pretty in-depth, backing up. Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the commission, Brian Gooch, Planning and Zoning. Get that out of the way. So I don't really have a formal presentation for tonight. The commission did continue discussion until this date to give some more time for the commissioners to review the plan. So mainly I'm just here to take any comments and try to answer any questions. I do have some slides of the route recommendations that can be used for reference. Also, at the last meeting, the commission made a comment on this plan's relation to the comprehensive road evaluation. And I do have some slides on the language relating to that plan as well that I can go over with you. And a couple sections I did work on expanding the language a little bit to try to tie this plan in a little better with that effort. So I'll take any questions and comments.
Commissioner Apicella?
Madam Chairman, just a few questions. So I've got the document in front of me. I'm looking at, first of all, again, like I said last time, outstanding work. This is a very comprehensive document. I know a lot of time and effort was put into it by certainly Mr. Gouge and the public. So I think it's, again, outstanding product. I'm looking at attachment 2, page 25, 3.0, planning considerations, first full paragraph. It's more of just a question. I happened to go out to Lake Mooney for the first time this past weekend. It's beautiful out there. I'm curious why there aren't any trails associated with Lake Mooney. Are there any plans to put any trails out there? I mean, it's a small version, in my opinion, of Lake Anna, but it's just an outstanding treasure that we have here in Stafford County.
Are you talking like a perimeter trail around the reservoir?
Yes.
Jeff, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think with the property take for that lake, we ended up with basically a lot of single-family lots backed up to the actual reservoir. So it doesn't present a lot of opportunities to have like a scenic trail around the reservoir, but we can certainly take another look at that and see if there are some parts of that could work for the plan.
Okay, thank you. And I'm looking at the second full paragraph where it speaks to the county code requirement for sidewalks in neighborhoods that contain lots less than 0.66 acres in size. Is that still the right benchmark, or do we want to take another look at that and reconsider whether it should be some different standard?
We could take a look at that, maybe take a look at some of the existing neighborhoods that have lots over that size and just the character of those areas to see if that could be appropriate.
Thank you. Again, at attachment 2, page 31, I'm looking at the map of crash data, and just kind of at a quick glance, it looks like most of the pedestrian accidents are along Warrenton Road, Route 1, and Garrisonville. And on the bicycle side, it's Butler Road and Route 3 East. So it's not mentioned here. Are there any common trends leading to these types of accidents?
In my opinion, it's more of a matter of, well, I guess a couple things. It's sheer traffic volume in certain areas. It's road width. The wider the road, the more dangerous it is to cross, obviously. And that combined with the traffic volumes. But I think some of these accidents may have been prior to the improvements on these roadways, which did provide some sidewalk improvements and some crosswalk improvements. However, I think in some locations, for instance, especially up on 610, near Onville and Mine Road, there could be some improvements to crosswalks in those locations that may improve the situation. And another caveat is we don't really know the circumstances of all these crashes. We know they happen, but we don't know the reason. So it could be something that's not necessarily facility related, but we do have to look at where these are concentrated to see, to take a closer look at the facilities there to see if there's improvements that can be made.
And I'm wondering too, if some of these accidents are happening more at night or in the early morning hours where folks are harder to see. And I've noticed just in traveling in the early morning hours that if someone's wearing really dark clothes and they're attempting to cross the street, not at a crosswalk, they're very hard to see.
Right.
So I don't know if, maybe Mr. English knows if we could do some more education or signage, if there's places where there's a concentration of these kind of accidents to remind people, number one, don't cross where there's not a crosswalk or.
I just, I think it's Montgomery County or one of them is having really big, or DC is having big issues with people getting hit on bikes. And I don't know what their answer is. I mean, there had it was in the news a couple of weeks ago. Did you catch that or not? Where they were having issues because they've got their own bike paths and everything in DC, and they were having, I don't know what their answer is, what they're trying to do. They're in DC and they've got designated bike areas and they're having traffic accidents, and I don't know what the causes, what the issue is up there, but it's educating the public, again, it's like for the stuff, something like that, how you do it, but.
Yeah, it's definitely a part of it, and as Mr. Apicella said, you can't always control these things. Sometimes people just use facility incorrectly or cross regardless of whether it was crossing or not. So.
Could you, Brian, is it possible, could you go and check with DC or whatever and see what, I mean, I think they're having some major issues with bike accidents. It might, what they're doing or what their answer is. Like it was on TV a couple of weeks ago about that before this come up, so.
Another thing we could do is reach out to the Sheriff's Department to see, from their experience, what some of these accidents might be caused by more so.
Madam Chairman, I just have two more questions or points. I'm looking at attachment 2, page 58, and I just don't know what it is. About the middle of the page, it says VDOT stars. What is that? It says other studies such as the VDOT STAR study and the Stafford Comprehensive Road Evaluation. I just have not heard that.
So that effort is detailed in Chapter 3. Let me find that real quick. So that is attachment 2, page 42, about halfway down. It's the Strategically Targeted and Affordable Roadway Solutions. It's a program. It's put on by VDOT. They recently completed a study along Route 17 business corridor. And it's basically the intent of it is to look at affordable short-term solutions and these stretches of roads that have high accident rates. And
Sorry, go ahead.
And that includes. And that study did include specific recommendations for pedestrian improvements along that corridor.
Oh, well, that's great, because that's one of the places where there seems to be a lot of
Yes.
pedestrian accidents.
And that was one study that was completed and they're requesting funding for. The implementation also that VDOT's currently in the process of working with the county on Route 1 from, if I remember right, it's Cole Landing Road north to roughly Telegraph Road.
Great. Is that something that there's a link to that we can access? That study that's already occurred?
Yes, it's on the VDOT website.
So is there any possibility you can send us the link? Last point, Madam Chairman. So I'm looking at attachment 2, page 59, under proffers, and talks about proffer contributions towards transportation and parks and rec. And I'm just wondering whether, in our calculation of parks and rec proffers, if and when we revisit it, really takes into consideration bicycle and pedestrian improvements as compared to just parks. So I just want to, I guess what I'm saying is if we were to revisit what we think is an adequate proffer contribution, to me, that should be a part of the calculus if it's not already. I don't think it is, but, you know, I think it's something we should revisit.
Yeah, and I certainly agree, especially when it comes to within parks, trail facilities provided within parks. I guess we could discuss what would be better is when you're talking about linear connections along roadways, would that be something more associated with a transportation proffer or a park-type proffer, since they do serve both purposes, both recreational and transportation purposes?
I just have one question. What would it take to get a sidewalk from Sheets on Garrisonville Road to the Vista Woods subdivision? I think it's full. I'm trying to remember the name of the street.
Are you talking about dollar
Furnace Road,
amounts,
yeah.
or
What'd you say?
the costs of something like that, or?
No, get it on this report.
Okay.
Yeah, Furnace Road. It's down Furnace from the Sheets, because we have a lot of people that, unfortunately, we didn't think forward, I guess, to all of the children after school who were going to be coming in. And I apologize for not sending this to you ahead of time. Coming from Vista Woods to the Sheets and crossing over, and we're going to potentially have some additional businesses across the street there on Garrisonville. It'd be wonderful if there was a sidewalk.
Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
I think one of the issues on Furnace Road is it's wetlands, just there's a big pond on the left hand and there's some on the right.
Yeah, there should be enough room for a sidewalk, though, I think. I've just seen lots of kids in the road there. Okay, anybody else? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
When I was driving on Trustlow Road this weekend to get a good look at it, we saw somebody riding on that road. We need to give them someplace else to ride.
Riding what? Their bicycle?
Bicycle on Trustlow.
People do that all the time on the back roads. I don't understand it.
That road is nuts to ride.
Yeah. But they do. Stony Hill is another one I've seen people out there. Okay, is that all your presentation? I don't want to cut you short.
There's no more questions or comments?
I think we're good. What do you, yeah. We're going to need you to go into a little more detail, Mr. Gooch.
Okay, all right. Bring up
what
my
do-
other presentation, please.
What do we want to do with this? Do we need some more time to look it over, to ponder any additional recommendations? What do we want to do this evening? We have until
August.
May 20, wait,
August 20.
August 14th.
August 14th.
So, Madam Chairman, from a staff
Hold on,
perspective,
Mr. Harvey.
we'll take into account the comments, and we'll have to make some adjustments to the document.
Yes.
Specifically, sidewalk that you mentioned.
I
is
know, I'm
not-
sorry. I'm late to the
so
game.
We'll probably need to do that before we advertise. So would it be better, Mr. Gooch, to bring this back at another meeting for final verification before we set the ad?
How much time do you need, Mr. Gooch?
It could come back on June 12th.
Okay, let's bring it, everybody good with, let's bring it back on June 12th, and then we'll vote it to public hearing for August?
You gonna check,
Or maybe July. I just don't know the dates off the top of my head. Is it July 15th? July 10th? So it's not going to be enough time, June, because it has to be 30 days or 3 weeks? 3 weeks? 3 weeks, okay. So it will be enough time. Never mind. Thank you. We'll bring it back June 12th. Okay, items number 4 and 5 are deferred already until June 12th. We have no new business, which brings us to the planning director's report. We have 2 items on there. Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We need to consider wrapping up the commission's recommendations for legislative priorities for this upcoming General Assembly session. We have the ones listed from prior years and ask the commission if there's any changes or additions or deletions that you would like to recommend that the board consider.
Commissioner Apocello?
Madam Chairman, I have 2 recommended changes. One is probably just wordsmithing, maybe more so than needed. So I'm looking at the first one regarding cluster development. I'm just going to throw it out there. So it currently reads, the Planning Commission agrees with Delegate Thomas's bill HB 341 that stormwater management facilities should be excluded from required open space lands. I have an additional sentence to add after that. like roads, which are also necessary for most subdivisions, comma, these types of facilities are man-made, strike out the and, do not exist in a natural state, and do not provide recreational opportunities for residents. I'm just trying to make a point here to kind of reemphasize roads aren't counted towards open space. So if we don't count roads as open space, why are we required to count stormwater facilities as open space?
Okay. I don't have any issues with that. Does anybody else? I think that's a great suggestion. What's your,
I'll give it to you one. The second
you get
one
that, Stacy?
is on the transportation funding criteria. And again, maybe the board, when they submitted it last time, changed the version that we sent them. I think our approach that we recommended was to evaluate both on weekday and weekend traffic volumes. So I still think that's the right methodology. I don't think VDOT is just going to do weekend traffic volumes. Perhaps, or the state would agree to just weekend traffic volumes. I think they might at least potentially be more amenable to both weekend and weekday traffic volumes. So that's the change I would recommend.
Okay. Anybody have any issues with that? All right. Do we need to vote on this, all the legislative priorities? Well, first let me back up. Does anybody else have any other recommendations or changes for the priorities?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Randall.
I'm back on the recreational amenities, but not.
Oh, dear Lord.
Response.
I'm kidding.
After talking to those in delegates and Senate, there is nothing in the state law, and being a Dillon rule law doesn't allow us, Dillon rule state, I should say, doesn't allow us to do anything without those things being identified by the legislature in the first place. And so I would like to add that we consider suggesting that they add recreational amenities to the state law so that we can at least identify with developers the opportunity to, and I don't know if that would be in the, it wouldn't necessarily be in a cluster per se. It may be something on its own. But I would like to add that to the.
Are you talking for by right or for rezoning?
I would do it for everything.
Okay, because for rezoning,
I would make it applicable for every development, by right or not, that you have to have some type of recreational amenities, meeting a certain standard. Just the language enough that we can, as a county now, delve into negotiations with developers.
What do we want to do with that? Does everyone agree? I mean, I kind of need to see some language before I agree to that. When do we need to get this to the board, Mr. Harvey?
Madam Chairman, the request that I received from the administrator's office was to have recommendations at the end of the month, so they could start discussions in June about how to prioritize and winnow down what they're going to ask the delegation to sponsor.
Okay. Sorry. So what do we want to do here, guys?
I think if you do what he said, it's going to kind of get it open the end broad.
Well, I'm not really sure what piece of legislation it would be in reference to, because you've got clusters, you've got general development subdivision plans. I guess we'd have to, maybe this year we research where that would go, what type of, talk to some legislators about what they recommend before we put something down on paper, because I don't even know where we would address that in the law.
Because for rezoning, we can already have those
Yeah, we
discussions
can
for
already do
proffers.
that, yeah.
So by right is a different story, and I agree with you,
Yeah.
Crystal, that'd be hard to.
I think there's a lot of unintended consequences there with HOAs and things that they may not quite be palatable. You're looking at me funny, Mr. Harvey, what?
Madam Chairman, for by right development, it would probably go in the subdivision-related sections of the state code dealing with subdivision plats. I guess the question would be, do we want to target it to preliminary subdivision plans, which are subdivisions of more than 50 lots, or do we want it to apply to all subdivision plats?
All subdivisions. All subdivisions. We're having enough problems with 50 and below not having to follow anything else. I would have it do for all of them.
All right, so I guess the question to the commission is, what do we want to do here? I have a hard time voting on it without having the language and knowing what we're asking.
I got a suggestion.
Yeah.
If Mr. Randall's would provide, maybe look at this and maybe bring it back for next year. Maybe work on it a little bit and see what we can come up with, or just throw it out there and have them, huh?
Mr. Apicella?
I mean, I agree with
Mark,
Mr. Randall's
yeah.
sentiments. I think we need to see it in actual verbiage to be able to push something forward, because I don't think we want to push something that at the end might come back and be problematic because we didn't say it the right way. Didn't
Yeah.
articulate exactly what we wanted.
We're just kicking it down the road one more year. That's how we're
Well,
doing.
but let's get it right. You know, let's make our case, and let's put the words in a way, in a form that, you know, can.
June 12th too late to present something? Are they,
Well, if the administrator's asking for it
10
by the
days,
end
is
of the
that going to
month.
be is that a make or break?
Well, Madam Chairman and Commissioner Randall, I certainly can ask the Administrator's Office if there could be some additional time granted to flesh out this issue.
How about if we do this? Let's approve what we have.
Yes, that's what I was
And
gonna
then if you're ready with something on the 12th, you can present it and we can just propose it as an addendum and they can choose whether they're going to
Yeah.
push it forward or not. Would that work? I mean, you don't actually have something for us to vote on. It's just kind of conceptual at this time.
Yeah. I'm good with that. You good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. That's fine.
Okay, so we'll do that. So do we need to take a vote on these, Ms. Lucian, to send these legislative priorities to the administrator, that we approve of them?
With the changes recommended.
With the changes,
by Mr.
yeah.
Apicella.
Doesn't hurt.
Okay, does somebody have a motion?
So move.
To do
Second.
what? You can't
To
just say
accept
so.
what the, Mr. Apicella has read out.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to accept the legislative priorities with Mr. Apicella's changes. We have a second by Mr. McPherson. Go ahead and, do any discussion? Okay, vote.
Are these
No.
priorities, or is this just a
Green
list?
means yes.
It's not a priority. Don't start with me. It's not a priority list, it's just a list.
It's just a list of legislative priorities, not in no ranking order.
In no ranking order. So when you say priority, that changes. Okay, all right, I understand.
It's the green button.
Green button is yes,
Yes.
red button is no. At least 3 months.
She doesn't need any
What is
help.
going on? Can you tally the vote? Okay, perfect. We're still missing Mr. Randall.
Because you're distracting me.
5-0, motion carries. Okay, A1 uses, Mr. Harvey.
Madam Chairman, yes, this is something that the commission's worked on for a while, and the board's looked it over and made some adjustments, and send it back to the commission to start the public hearing process. This would amend a number of the permitted uses in the A1 zoning district, specifically, as one of the speakers mentioned during public presentation time, for event venues. It would increase or first it would allow and define event venues, and then also specify a minimum of 20 acres in size. There's some other uses that will now have acreage limitations to them. So I asked the commission as to how you want to proceed. The code amendment does allow the commission to make more adjustments if you deem necessary.
Does anybody have any comments, Mr. Apicella?
There's a lot here. It's been about a year since we started this process. I would just want to have enough time to really do a deep dive and make sure that everything that was proposed as additional fixes or changes were actually incorporated, so we don't wind
Yeah.
up advertising something and finding out, oh, well, we missed a word here, or we missed a phrase, or we didn't get it quite right. So I would just suggest that we wait at least 2 weeks before we take any action on it.
I agree. I think we need to take a deep dive and take into account Ms. Brown's comments earlier to make sure that some of the stuff that she mentioned were incorporated, and reassess it on June 12th. Does anybody have any issues with that? All right, so if everybody can make sure to look at these and provide any comments to staff. If you've noticed anything missing or any questions that you might have, please reach out to them prior to the June 12th meeting. Actually, prior to that even, maybe like by June 9th or 10th, so that they can incorporate that in the agenda packet. Okay, County Attorney's report.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I have no report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports, we have the Cluster Ordinance Policy Subcommittee, which is really on recess right now. They will possibly have something either June 12th or potentially even later on some updates. Mr. Randall, do you have any comment on that?
No, just by advice of council, it looks like we want to hold on making any vote or determination on that until some legal matters get resolved. So that may move it into August. Hopefully in June, we'll have some more clarification as to when that time will come.
Okay, and I don't have any chairman's report this evening. Other business, we have some TRCs on Whitson Woods and Winding Creek in the Garrisonville Election District. Unfortunately, it's on the primary day, June 11th. We don't have any minutes to approve, so meeting is adjourned.